Chapter 895. The rain was condensed by Ning Fan's killing intent. The rainstorm poured down, and the world turned cold. That sword seemed to have directly descended from the endless void. The 5 swords swept across the sky. Wherever they went, the blood of countless savage beasts would splatter in the void. More and more savage beasts blocked Xianjia's path. They used their flesh and blood to directly collide with the whistling sword shadows without any fear. However, none of the first-step savage beasts could stop the sword shadows. As soon as the life immortal realm savage beasts came into contact with the sword shadows, their bodies were immediately pierced through. They screamed and died. Only the savage beasts at the Duzhen realm and above could slightly stop the 5 swords. However, once the Duzhen savage beast was hit by the 5 rain swords, it would either die or be severely injured. It was because the 5 swords contained a trace of the Tao law of rain. Even though it was just a trace of the power of the Tao law, it was far from what the Duzhen savage beast could withstand. A large number of savage beasts blocked Xianjia's path and formed a formation. However, the 5 rain swords forcefully tore a path through the formation in just an instant. Blood flowed like a river along the way, rushing towards Xianjia, who was at the back. His figure, which was clad in red light, followed closely behind the 5 swords. He dashed forward, following the trajectory of the 5 swords, and passing through the tide of 200,000 savage beasts. Any savage beast that tried to get close to Ning Fan was killed by the 5 swords. 1 man and 5 swords dashed forward. None of the savage beasts could stop him. His magic power was being consumed like tides. Fortunately, he had devoured a large number of spiritual items of the 5 elements in his abdomen. He could refine them at any time to replenish his magic power. It seemed like his magic power would never be depleted. The savage beasts that were killed kept falling from the sky. Every second, there would be countless cries of pain. Finally, the 42 space-abandoning savage beasts that were hibernating in the void opened their eyes one after another. Their eyes glinted with ferocious light, and they dashed forward. With the strength of these space-abandoning savage beasts, it was enough to stop the 5 swords if they used their full strength to stop them. 6 space-abandoning savage beasts dashed towards Ning Fan with tremendous force, giving him a sense of pressure as if a cultivation planet was crashing into him. The rest of the space-abandoning savage beasts breathed brutal flash from their mouths. Black and red brutal flash aurora flew out like lightning. They intertwined with each other and formed a huge aurora net. All of a sudden, the net flew towards the 5 swords and Ning Fan. In just a blink of an eye, the net had already reached them. The net constantly emitted destructive waves. Once the 5 swords were hit by the net, they would definitely be blocked. Once Ning Fan is caught in the net, he will certainly be captured. Upon seeing this, Ning Fan's eyes turned solemn. He did not dare to face the giant net of aurora light head-on. The golden light beneath his feet flowed like water. All of a sudden, it was as if he was standing on a long golden river. Almost at the same time, his figure gradually faded, and the 5 rain swords faded along with him. The 6 primal beasts missed their target, and the aurora net also missed its target. The group of beasts was stunned. They did not know where Ning Fan and Wuxia had gone. With their eyesight, they naturally could not see that Ning Fan had directly flown through the encirclement of the group of beasts with his sword by relying on his astonishing speed. Perhaps only Xianjia alone could vaguely see Ning Fan's blurry figure. His speed was too fast. Xianjia could not help but feel astonished. He asked himself that even if he was at his peak state, it would be impossible for him to surpass the current Ning Fan. Ning Fan's attainment in speed was just too high. When he was traveling alone, he relied on his great ability, the earth-piercing golden light. Even if he was in the midst of an army of tens of thousands, he could still move freely like a butterfly weaving through flowers. After a few flashes, Ning Fan's red figure flashed and appeared at the back of the group of beasts. He was 100,000 zhang away from Xianjia. In front of him, there were still the 5 rain swords that were charging forward. After the 5 swords, it was still Ning Fan who was flying at full speed like a red ray. Ning Fan had left all 42 void-shedding wild beasts behind him. Even though 200,000 beasts had come out at the same time, they still could not stop Ning Fan's footsteps. If the sky wants to rain, who can stop it? If the sword wants to kill, who can stop it? More and more rainwater turned into ice. The intensity of the rain was decreasing bit by bit. However, Ning Fan's momentum of advancing was even more ferocious. Amidst the icy rain, he activated the 5 swords and advanced forward with an indomitable will. In his eyes, there was only a single belief. No matter what, I must take back the primordial spirit of the immortal lowly. Who is this person? He actually managed to break through the blockade of 200,000 beasts with the power of 5 swords alone. That is, Dao Law. There are actually Dao laws on his sword. How is this possible? Ghost face silver hair. It's him. He is the person who old ancestor poisonous dragon has set a bounty for his head. He is the one who sees the Bao spirit of the ancestral Bao. If we kill him, we can obtain an embryonic emperor pill. What? It's that person. Even the 7 truths 7 illusions arrow couldn't kill him. It's Shi Kong. Judging from his chi, he should be at the mid-shedding Kong realm, when he wasn't suppressed by the forbidden immortal force. I wonder if Elder Xian Jia can withstand the sword light of this person's Dao Law. Although this person's cultivation realm is lower than Elder Xian Jia's, his sword light is too terrifying. On the demon ship at the side, thousands of demon cultivators exclaimed in shock. Xian Jia's old eyes shrunk. Without saying a word, he retreated with a slightly unpleasant expression. He had already frozen part of the rain to weaken the power of the 5 swords. However, the 5 swords still penetrated the defense of the beasts and rushed towards him. It was unstoppable. Moreover, Ning Fan himself followed behind the 5 swords and rushed towards him. The defense of 200,000 beasts was nothing to Ning Fan. This kid's cultivation realm isn't as good as mine. However, the Dao Law on his sword is too terrifying. I can't face him head-on. Once I'm hit by that Dao Law, even I will be severely injured. I must block this sword. As long as I can block this sword, I can kill this kid with just a raise of my hand. While retreating, Xian Jia suddenly raised the short dagger axe in his hand. His aura suddenly changed and his demonic chi soared to the sky. Heaven-freezing dagger axe shatter and seal the heavens. As soon as the dagger axe rose into the sky, it immediately turned into a fierce cold wind that whistled across the sky. A totem of an ice dragon suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. The cold wind instantly spread to the entire gate of life. At this moment, the cold chi in heaven and earth suddenly increased. At this moment, all the raindrops in heaven and earth froze into ice in an instant. At this moment, all the rain in heaven and earth was completely sealed by the dagger axe. At this moment, the momentum of the 5 swords finally showed an obvious decrease. It was even about to stop. The sharpness of the 5 swords was actually dimming. Even the escaping light under Ning Fan's feet was being frozen bit by bit, gradually losing the ability to fly. The distance between Ning Fan and Xian Jia gradually widened from 100,000 zhang. Seeing this, Xian Jia heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, he managed to block the 5 swords. However, at the next moment, his expression changed greatly again. Ning Fan suddenly raised his hand and pressed it against the void. Heaven and earth trembled violently. 5 sword shadows were born from the void again. As for his aura force, it was approaching the shedding void realm along with Jie Fengyu and Zhang Yinyang. After displaying the soul extracting technique and the war god art, Ning Fan's aura force had already reached the mid-shedding void realm. It was not any weaker than Xian Jia's current strength. The 5 swords that appeared were different from the 5 swords of rain. They did not have a physical flying sword to carry them. These 5 swords only had illusory sword light. However, these sword light were condensed from all the battle intent in heaven and earth. They were known as the 5 swords of war. At the moment when the 5 swords of war were formed, the thousands of demon cultivators on the demon ship felt empty in their hearts, as if something had been taken away from them. However, they did not know why. Of course, they did not know that what was taken away from them was their battle intent. The ferocious flames in the eyes of the 200,000 savage beasts began to diminish bit by bit the moment the 5 swords of war were formed. Even Xian Jia himself was affected by the 5 swords of war. His originally steady state of mind also began to crack. He could not help but feel shocked by the strange ability of the 5 swords of war. What made him even more shocked was that a trace of Tao law of war was gradually emerging on the 5 swords of war. Another type of Tao law. Xianjia sucked in a breath of cold air. He could not tell the difference between the Tao law of rain and the Tao law of war. However, he could vaguely tell that the 2 types of Tao law were different. One should know that even an old monster at the eternal ancient realm could only use the power of one type of Tao law. There were only 1 or 2 old monsters at the eternal ancient realm who could use more than 2 types of Tao law out of 10 people. Ning Fan was obviously not an old monster at the eternal ancient realm, but he could use Tao law. That was already enough to shock Xianjia. Now, however, Ning Fan had actually created a second type of Tao law illusory sword. In that case, how could Xianjia not be shocked? Break! Ning Fan shouted. Immediately, 10,000 traces of war flames flew out from the 5 swords of war and turned into 10,000 traces of sword qi. In the beginning, there were only 10,000 traces of sword qi. Then each trace of sword qi was divided into 10,000 traces of sword qi. In an instant, there were already 10,000 traces of sword qi that rushed towards the heavens. Xianjia had already frozen the rain in heaven and earth. However, at this moment, that ice seal was shattered by the 10,000 traces of sword qi. When the ice seal was broken, the rainstorm that was sealed by the ice formed once again. Once again, a heavy downpour filled heaven and earth. The rain resumed. The battle swords arrived. Ning Fan pointed his finger at the void. The 5 swords of war immediately pierced through the sky and met with the 5 swords of rain. When the 10 swords were in front of him, Ning Fan suddenly hammered his chest, ignoring the intense pain. Once again, he sacrificed himself and forcefully coughed out a few mouthfuls of blood essence. His blood essence fused with the 10 swords, causing the power of the 10 swords to increase by another level. Ning Fan, who continuously sacrificed himself, did not have an easy time. Under the ghost mask, his face turned pale. The injuries on his physical body gradually worsened. However, his eyes became even crazier and colder. Give me back her primordial spirit. The killing intent in his eyes became even stronger. His voice reverberated in this world for a long time. Like a sudden clap of thunder, it exploded in the ears of the cultivators on the demon ship, causing them to buzz incessantly. In this voice, there was also a sense of conviction. In front of this conviction, so what if there were 200,000 savage beasts? So what if there were old demon Xuanyan? So what if there were 10 million people? No one could stop him. Today, Ning Fan must take back Xian Xian's primordial spirit. Even if this world turns into a river of blood, he would not hesitate. As Ning Fan's mind flickered, the 10 swords whistled out again. The sword qi spread across the entire world. The sword qi was not sharp. However, because it contained Tao laws, it gave people an extremely heavy pressure as if they were facing the heavenly might. As for Ning Fan, he followed the 10 swords in a ghostly manner. His aura force seemed to have merged with heaven and earth as he approached Xianjia at the same time. Xianjia was shocked. He turned into a ray of demonic light and quickly retreated. However, how could his speed of retreat be faster than Ning Fan's speed of attack? 100,000 zhang, 90,000 zhang, 80,000 zhang, 40,000 zhang, 30,000 zhang, 20,000 zhang. The distance between Ning Fan and Xianjia was constantly shrinking. This scene was just like how Xianjia kept chasing after Ning Fan. When the distance between them was only 1,000 zhang, Ning Fan's eyes flashed with a cold light. The 10 swords dashed out and his speed suddenly increased. His entire being seemed to have turned into sword light. This strike was almost the strongest strike that Ning Fan could unleash right now. The sword light contained the power of Tao laws. It was nearly indestructible. The might of the slash seemed to be enough to split heaven and earth. Even a great expert of the demon race like Xianjia would turn pale with fright in the face of such an attack. Not good. When the 10 swords approached him, the power of Tao laws that they contained made Xianjia's body and soul shiver. If he was at his peak, he would also have a way to deal with the 10 swords of Tao laws. However, at this moment, it was too difficult for him to stop the 10 swords with his mid-shedding void realm strength. His eyes turned cold, and he suddenly stopped retreating. With a sway of his body, he turned into 8 demon shadows. The 8 demon shadows raised their fingers at the same time, and pressed down on the 10 swords. The 8 fingers combined into one, and immediately turned into a 1,000 demon finger. It was powerful enough to kill all cultivators in the Dujin realm. At the tip of the demon finger, there was a trace of gray poisonous mist. It kept hissing and emitting the sound of a poisonous snake hissing. At the moment when the giant finger pressed down, the gray mist immediately turned into a 1,000 long snake head with white bones. It swooped down at the 10 swords and Ning Fan. Ning Fan's eyes were cold and emotionless. He did not retreat but advanced instead. He controlled the 10 swords and continued to dash forward, directly colliding with the 1,000 snake head. The 10 swords whistled through the air and destroyed the snake head with just a single strike. Then they continued to slash at the 1,000 demon finger. As soon as the demon finger came into contact with the 10 swords, it was immediately torn apart by the Tao laws. It was penetrated from the middle and broke into two. Xianjia's expression changed drastically when his divine ability was broken. As for Ning Fan, he was only 500 zhang away from Xianjia. Dragon transformation. Xianjia shouted coldly and revealed his demon form. It was a gray-scaled gigantic dragon. He used the dragon horns on his head to collide with the 10 swords. As soon as he collided with the 10 swords, 2 shadows of gigantic horns immediately appeared in the void. Wherever the shadows of the horns passed, the void was immediately split into ravines that could not be healed. The force of the collision had actually created a gap in the sword qi of heaven and earth. The strong wind that was formed from the collision was so strong that it made one's face hurt. It was even stronger than the force of a savage beast. Under the impact of that tremendous force, the bodies of the 5 swords of war were almost scattered. Among the 5 swords of rain, the 4-minute swords had already begun to show cracks. At the end of the day, the 4-minute swords were just immortal swords of the 5th Nirvana post-celestial Nirvana stage. Its grade was a little low for a Void Realm battle. Only the 12 Nirvana post-celestial Nirvana stage sword of separation and reunion did not suffer any damage. Facing Xianjia, this sword seemed to have become Ning Fan's greatest reliance. The tremendous force of the collision of the dragon horns made Ning Fan's joints emit cracking sounds. His eyes turned solemn. He raised his finger and pointed downwards, trying his best to activate the power of the separation and reunion sword. The 10 swords then gathered and instantly formed a 1,000 zhang sword shadow with the separation and reunion sword as the center. At this moment, all the rain intent and battle intent in heaven and earth merged into the 1,000 zhang sword shadow. Ning Fan's robes fluttered in the wind, and his silver hair danced wildly. He pressed his 5 fingers forward, and the 1,000 zhang sword shadow immediately pierced through the gigantic dragon's head. The power of the 10 swords alone was not enough to penetrate Xianjia's dragon-scaled demon body. However, Xianjia was suppressed by the power of the forbidden immortal realm. Thus, his demon body was not as strong as before. As for the 10 swords, the power of the Tao laws entwined around them had greatly increased after Ning Fan repeatedly damaged himself. In addition to the sharpness of the separation and reunion sword, it was no longer something a mere demon body could withstand. When the dragon horns of the gigantic dragon were slashed by the 1,000 zhang sword shadow, it was still able to resist the power of the Tao laws for a while. However, the moment the separation and reunion sword fell on it, it was immediately reduced to ashes. The separation and reunion sword was hidden in the 1,000 zhang sword shadow. After destroying the pair of dragon horns, it continued moving forward and directly cut off half of the dragon's head. Then, it went along the wound and instantly penetrated the dragon's body. Dragon blood splattered across the vast sky like rain. Broken dragon scales, dragon bones, and minced meat fell from the sky. Ning Fan followed closely behind the separation and reunion sword, and dashed inside the gigantic dragon's body. The 10 swords scattered and swept across the dragon from inside to outside, directly cutting the gigantic dragon into tens of pieces. Xianjia let out a blood-curdling scream. His expression was filled with extreme shock and anger. He did not expect that his gigantic dragon demon body would be directly destroyed by Ning Fan. At the critical moment, the only thing Xianjia could do was to abandon his physical body and use his demon soul to carry his storage pouch and escape from the dragon corpse in a panic. Only then did he notice that among the 10 swords, there was actually a 12 Nirvana post-celestial immortal sword. Without this sword, no matter how strong the sword light of the Tao laws was, it would be impossible to cut off his dragon horns and destroy his demon body with a single strike. Post-celestial immortal treasures that are above the 9th Nirvana stage are extremely rare in this world. As for a 12 Nirvana immortal treasure, even the ancient immortal venerables might not necessarily have one. How could this man have a 12 Nirvana immortal treasure with his insignificant cultivation base? Xianjia's heart was filled with regret. If he knew that Ningfan possessed such a high-grade immortal sword, he certainly would not have used his demon body to resist the immortal sword head-on. However, it was also fortunate that he had decisively abandoned his physical body. Otherwise, this trace of his demon soul would probably not be able to escape death. Xianjia's demon soul fled back to the demon ship. Outside the demon ship, there were 200,000 savage beasts that were closely guarding it. The expressions of the beasts were still extremely ferocious. However, under that ferocious expression, there was more or less fear. What they were afraid of was naturally Ningfan's unstoppable 10 swords. The thousands of demon cultivators did not even dare to breathe loudly. From their point of view, even though Elder Xianjia's cultivation base was suppressed, his strength was still incomparable to ordinary mid-shedding Void Realm cultivators. However, under Ningfan's sword light, his physical body was destroyed in just a single blow. It was really frightening. This man is really strong. It's impossible for him to be a nobody in the human race. What level of immortal sword is that? It actually destroyed Elder Xianjia's demon body directly. Ningfan's figure, which was clad in red light, had already been deeply imprinted in the hearts of all the demon cultivators like a nightmare. These demon cultivators asked themselves if they were in Ningfan's shoes to resist the might of those 10 swords, perhaps none of them would be able to survive. The sword light of the Tao laws was very frightening. The separation and reunion sword, which was at the 12 Nirvana level, was just as frightening. I didn't manage to kill this demon in a single blow, huh? Ningfan's body was surrounded by 10 rays of sword light. He flew out from the remains of the gigantic dragon in a flash. His expression was filled with slight regret. In order to snatch back Immortal Loli's primordial spirit in a single blow, Ningfan did not hesitate to injure himself repeatedly. Naturally, the injuries on his body were not light, and he even felt a little weak. After activating the separation and reunion sword with all his might, he had also paid the price of injuring himself. However, he did not manage to kill Xianjia directly, and only destroyed his demon body. It was really a pity. The most regretful thing was that he still failed to snatch back Immortal Loli's primordial spirit through this all-out attack. Ningfan's eyes glowed with green light. He stared at Xianjia coldly across the void space. If he did not sense wrongly, the magic treasure which captured Xianxian's primordial spirit was currently in Xianjia's storage pouch. Waves of weakness came to Ningfan, causing his chi to become slightly messy. He took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the feeling of weakness. Then he pointed at the 10 swords with his index finger, and controlled them to fly out again. If I can't snatch back Xianxian's primordial spirit in the first time, I'll try again. No matter what, I must snatch Xianxian's primordial spirit back. Hiss! That ghost-faced old monster is coming again. When the group of demons saw Ningfan flying towards them with his swords, all of them were shocked. Even Xianjia felt his scalp go numb. He was unwilling to admit it, but he had to admit that he was no match for Ningfan now that he was suppressed by the forbidden immortal power. Be it speed, magic treasures, or divine abilities, he seemed to be inferior to Ningfan in all aspects. Under Xianjia's command, 200,000 wild beasts rushed out again, forming a beast tide that flooded towards Ningfan. Ningfan's eyes flashed with cold light. He spurted out a few mouthfuls of blood essence again, and activated the 10 swords, directly rushing towards the 200,000 wild beasts. Even though the 200,000 wild beasts were blocking his way, they could not withstand the might of the 10 swords. When the 10 swords opened up a path, a gap was immediately torn open by Ningfan, who was charging forward. After the 10 swords, Ningfan's body was shrouded in red light. He looked like a peerless, ferocious beast. His aura was actually unstoppable. Any low-grade wild beasts that tried to get close to him were killed by him with a wave of his hand, just like before. If there were any void-shedding wild beasts blocking his way, Ningfan would immediately step on a golden rainbow and disappear in a flash. He followed the sword shadows and flew past them without engaging in a battle with them. He only had one goal: to get close to Xianjia again in the midst of the army of 10,000 wild beasts and seize his storage pouch. He killed his way in and out of the army of 200,000 wild beasts. In front of him, the army of 200,000 wild beasts was actually nothing. Gradually, the roars of a large number of wild beasts resounded from one of the worlds of the Gate of Life in the void sky. Immediately after that, wild beasts flew out one after another. They were none other than the 14,000 wild beasts that Ningfan brought with him. The speed of these wild beasts was slower than Ningfan. That was why they took a long time to arrive at the battlefield. As soon as Ningfan saw the arrival of the group of wild beasts, he became spirited. After temporarily retreating from the beast tide, he met up with the 14,000 wild beasts and charged towards the beast tide again. Xianjia was not the only one who had an army of wild beasts. Ningfan also had an army of them. Even though their numbers were not as great as Xianjia's, they could still be considered as a great help. Hiss! This man has never signed a blood restriction with the wild beasts before. Why is he able to control the wild beasts like me? Xianjia's eyes widened in shock. The thousands of demon cultivators on the demon ships were just as shocked. The reason why some of the cultivators in the demon race could control the wild beasts was because they had signed a blood restriction with the wild beasts. Human cultivators should not be able to control the wild beasts. However, Ningfan actually managed to do so. In the battle between the two armies, the wild beasts under Ningfan's command were weaker. However, they were still able to disrupt the enemy's formation. In the midst of the chaotic beast tide, Ningfan seized the opportunity and swept his 10 swords across, killing all the wild beasts within a 100 zhang radius. Then he stepped on a golden rainbow and instantly vanished without a trace. When he reappeared, he had already passed through the beast tide once again and was within 100 zhang radius of the demon ship. After a few flashes, the distance of 100 zhang was reduced to 1,000 zhang. Terrifying killing intent fell along with the torrential rain and instantly locked onto every single demon cultivator on the demon ship. Ningfan charged out of the beast tide for the second time and arrived in front of Xianjia. The roars of hundreds of thousands of wild beasts could not even cover the sound of the 10 swords in front of Ningfan. As Ningfan approached them, the expressions of all the demon cultivators on the demon ship changed drastically. Their faces were filled with fear. Ningfan's sword tip was already aimed at Xianjia, who was on the demon ship from the distance of 1,000 zhang. The power of the separation and reunion sword was once again activated by Ningfan bit by bit. Xianjia was shocked. Being locked onto by the 12 Nirvana immortal swords that were entangled with the Tao Law, the flow of his demon power immediately became sluggish. He felt an unprecedented sense of danger. Currently, he only had his demon soul left. If Ningfan gets close to the demon ship, he would certainly die. The only thing he could use to resist Ningfan was his trump card. If he had a choice, he would not want to use this trump card. However, at this moment, facing the sword light of the Tao Law and the 12 Nirvana immortal swords, he had no choice but to use this trump card to save his life even if he was unwilling to do so. There is a ferocious creature hidden in my void-piercing stone. Unless I have no other choice, I will never let it out no matter what. Before the sword light reached him, he suddenly raised his hand and pointed at the void-piercing stone from afar, shooting out a ray of demonic light. The demonic light shot into the void-piercing stone. Then, the mottled bloodstains on the void-piercing stone immediately gave off a dim light and began to flow on the stone. Gradually, those bloodstains formed 2 ancient characters on the stone. Those 2 ancient characters were ancient demon characters. There were many types of ancient demon characters. Xianjia and Ningfan could recognize this type. The 2 characters that appeared on the void-piercing stone were Anai and Fan. Anai Fan. These 2 characters were extremely strange. The word Anai contained the purest demonic power. The word fan contained the power of black and red barbaric flash. They were obviously two different types of power, but they were perfectly fused on the giant stone. At the moment when the two characters were formed, an ancient and vicissitude aura suddenly spread out from the giant stone. At the same time, a black mist demon shadow floated out from the giant stone. That demon shadow was an old man with black hair and black robes. His face looked very old, but his expression was cold and frightening. "My name is Ni Fan." The voice of the black-robed old man was cold and emotionless. As soon as his voice fell, black mist immediately dispersed behind the demon ship. Nearly 1,000 demon cultivators screamed in pain. All of their blood essence was taken away in an instant. They turned into dried corpses with their eyes wide open and died miserably on the ground. The blood essence that they had lost was all absorbed into the old man's body. After absorbing the blood essence, the old man faintly exuded an aura that was comparable to the peak of the crossing truth realm. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the 10 swords that fell from the sky. His eyes were so indifferent. Whether it was the sword light of Tao laws or the separation and reunion sword of the 12 nirvana, he actually did not put any of them in his eyes. At the moment when the 10 swords slashed towards Xi and Jia, the black-robed old man directly took a step forward. This step seemed to be stepping on the Tao laws of heaven and earth. However, as he took this step, the Tao laws of heaven and earth immediately flowed in the opposite direction. Ordinary cultivators would not be able to see this at all. Only Ning Fan alone could see this. The black-robed old man stretched out his hand and clawed with his 5 fingers. There was no demonic power flowing out of his hand, but it was as if he could crush the void with a single strike. Without any hesitation, he directly grabbed Ning Fan's 10 swords of Tao laws, as if he was not afraid of those Tao laws at all. As the black-robed old man clawed with his 5 fingers, the 10 swords first trembled and then retreated. As for the Tao laws on the swords, they were all erased by the black-robed old man in an instant. That clawing force was invisible. However, even Ning Fan himself was pushed back 10,000 zhang by the black wind formed by that clawing force. His body felt as if it was about to fall apart. He felt an indescribable pain, and his expression was even more shocked. What kind of ferocious creature is this? It can actually directly erase the Tao laws. Such a divine ability was simply unheard of. Demon blood is not enough. The black-robed old man waved his hand again. Another 1,000 demon cultivators on the demon ship fell to the ground and turned into dried corpses. The blood essence that they had lost flowed into the black-robed old man's body. Immediately, his aura force became much stronger. Originally, his aura force was only equivalent to the peak crossing truth realm. However, after devouring 2,000 demon cultivators, his aura force had risen to the early shedding void realm. Every time this ferocious creature appears, it needs to devour the blood essence of demon cultivators in order to exert its strength. That's why I'm not willing to summon this ferocious creature. I didn't expect this ferocious creature to actually be able to erase the Tao laws. This is my first time learning about this. In that case, with it here, it should be enough to deal with that human cultivator. This person killed my disciple and destroyed my physical body. Today, no matter what, I must keep him here and kill him. Xi and Jia's eyes were filled with ruthlessness. All of a sudden, he felt a chill on his back. It was the black-robed old man's cold and fierce eyes that swept across him and ordered him without any room for refusal. Hand over half of your demon soul to me. Otherwise die. Chapter 896. Xi and Jia's expression immediately changed. He did not expect that the ferocious creature he summoned would make such an outrageous request, asking for half of his demon soul. Without giving Xi and Jia a chance to refuse, the black-robed old man immediately grabbed the air with his 5 fingers as soon as he finished speaking. The Tao laws around him flowed in reverse. Xi and Jia gasped. He did not expect that the ferocious creature would directly attack him. In the blink of an eye, 5 rays of black mist had already appeared 10 zhang in front of him. With another flash, those rays of light directly pierced through him and were about to reach him. Xi and Jia's eyes turned cold. He naturally would not allow those rays of light to reach him. He shook his storage pouch, and 12 glittering golden dragon teeth immediately flew out. They revolved in front of him, protecting him. Those 12 dragon teeth were a set of defensive magic treasures. The great of them had reached 7th nirvana nascent heaven, and were quite extraordinary. As soon as they appeared, a shadow of a dragon's head flew out and swallowed the incoming rays of light. However, that finger ray was too terrifying. With just a single attack, it directly wiped out the shadow of the dragon's head. When it moved forward, the 12 dragon teeth seemed to have suffered a heavy blow and were directly turned into ashes. Xianjia was shocked. The strangeness of that finger ray was beyond his expectation. It was already too late for him to dodge. His demon soul was directly penetrated by the 5 rays of light and was torn apart. Xianjia let out a miserable shriek. Half of his demon soul was directly torn apart by the black-robed old man. His demon blood splattered everywhere. The black-robed old man retrieved the torn demon soul and swallowed it. His face immediately became a little redder. His aura force skyrocketed again, approaching the mid-shedding void realm. The mid-shedding void realm seemed to be the limit of his cultivation base. He no longer devoured demon blood to increase his cultivation base. His cold eyes scanned across the demons on the demon ship. Eventually, his gaze fell on Ning Fan, who was standing outside the ship. When the black-robed old man's gaze fell on them, the remaining 3,000+ demon cultivators on the demon ship felt a chill down their spines. The abilities of this black-robed old man were too ferocious and shocking. In just a snap of his fingers, he had taken away the demon blood of 2,000 demon cultivators. With a wave of his hand, he could destroy 7th nirvana nascent heaven immortal treasures, and even tear Xianjia's demon soul apart, rendering him powerless to resist. Ning Fan's eyes became even more solemn. In his opinion, this black-robed old man was much more dangerous than the current Xianjia. Ning Fan also noticed that there was a trace of purple light flickering in the black-robed old man's eyes when he casted his divine ability. That flash of purple light seemed a little familiar. "You want to kill this person?" the black-robed old man coldly asked Xianjia. Facing Xianjia, there was an innate pressure of a superior. "That's right. You've already swallowed half of this demon's demon soul. Quickly kill this kid, otherwise, this demon will surely not let you off lightly." Xianjia replied with a gloomy expression. At this moment, only the left half of Xianjia's demon soul remained. The right half of his body had already been torn away by the black-robed old man. He activated the Yao art, and the right half of the Yao soul gradually reconstructed, growing arms and legs. However, the entire Yao soul became illusory and transparent, and its aura weakened. Half of the demon soul's power had been snatched away by the black-robed old man, and it could not be replenished. Xianjia looked at the black-robed old man with an extremely cold gaze, but more than that, it was filled with regret. If he had known that he would lose half of his demon soul by summoning this monster, he would never have chosen to summon it. Since it had already happened, there was no turning back. At this moment, Xianjia only wished to borrow the strength of this monster to kill Ning Fan. After that, he would slowly settle the old scores with this monster. Noisy. The black-robed old man's eyes turned cold. An invisible ancient demon aura immediately pressed down on Xianjia. Being shaken by the aura, Xianjia felt a pain in his chest, forcing him to take a few steps back. He coughed out a mouthful of blood and his face was filled with shock. The black-robed old man no longer paid attention to Xianjia. His cold gaze swept across Ning Fan, and he seemed a little confused. However, that confusion soon turned into indifferent and merciless killing intent. He said coldly, "A single finger is enough to kill this person." The black-robed old man's body swayed and merged with heaven and earth with a single step, disappearing without a trace. At the next moment, tens of thousands of black mist demon shadows appeared one after another in the void around Ning Fan. Each of the demon shadows had the same appearance as the black-robed old man. Each of the demon shadows seemed to be stepping on the heavenly Tao, carrying an innate heavenly might. Tens of thousands of demon shadows raised their fingers at the same time and pressed down on Ning Fan from a distance away. The aura force that they gave off was like the wrath of the heavens. There was no rumbling sound and no flow of demon power. It was just an ordinary finger press. The only special thing was that there was purplish-black demon power flowing on the tip of the finger. Ning Fan's eyes immediately turned cold. If he was not mistaken, that finger obviously contained the demon power of the Fuli tribe. However, that finger did not only contain the power of the Fuli tribe. It also contained the power of the wild beasts. At the tip of the black-robed old man's finger, the demon power of the Fuli tribe and the wild beasts had perfectly merged into one. Under the influence of that power, the Tao laws around Ning Fan's body began to circulate in the opposite direction. Countless illusory shadows of cultivation planets immediately appeared between heaven and earth. All of them were rotating in the opposite direction of the great Tao. Half of them were purplish-black while the other half were dark red. As the illusory shadows of the cultivation planets revolved in the opposite direction, the great Tao was completely reversed. At this moment, all the living beings in this world felt that their cultivation bases were disappearing. That was the true loss of their cultivation bases. The cultivation bases of all living beings were being madly erased by the black-robed old man's finger. Each of the wild beasts temporarily stopped killing each other. All of them were terrified and their chi began to plummet. Each of the demon cultivators looked at each other in shock. They could not understand why the demon power in their bodies would burn and vanish like crazy. The higher the cultivation base, the faster the loss of their demon power. Xianjia's heart pounded wildly. He had already summoned ferocious creatures a few times. However, it was his first time seeing a ferocious creature display such a powerful ability. Under the black-robed old man's finger technique, Xianjia's demon power was burning madly. In just a breath's time, his cultivation base of 100,000 years was actually erased by the black-robed old man. The ability of the black-robed old man's finger was obviously enough to erase the cultivation base of all living beings under the thought fragmentation realm. This was under the premise that the black-robed old man could only display the power of the mid-shedding void realm. If this black-robed old man's strength was slightly stronger, perhaps he could even erase the cultivation base of a cultivator at the thought fragmentation realm, or the eternal ancient realm with just a finger. Shagu. The black-robed old man suddenly shouted these two words. No one could understand what he was saying. Ning Fan was the only one who understood this word. At first he did not understand it. However, the moment he heard this word, a part of the inherited memories of the Fuli clan appeared in his bloodline out of nowhere. This word was the demon language of the Fuli clan. There were very few people in the world who could understand it. The bloodline of the demon race was very mysterious. It could inherit a lot of information such as innate abilities and the demon language of the clan. Ever since Ning Fan obtained the Fuli bloodline, it was his first time comprehending the language of the clan from his bloodline. The word Shagu, that the black-robed old man shouted out, was an opportunity for Ning Fan to comprehend the demon language of the Fuli clan. In the Fuli clan, this word only had one meaning, and that was returning to the void. Returning to the void meant the death of one's Tao. It also meant that all the abilities one cultivated would be annihilated in the long river of samsara. The finger technique of the black-robed old man undoubtedly had the mighty power to erase the cultivation base of any living beings and destroy their Tao. In Ning Fan's sea of consciousness, more and more memories of the bloodline appeared. Gradually, he actually recognized the origin of the black-robed old man's ability. In ancient times, when the Fuli clan still existed, they were once the overseer of the heavenly Tao and the leader of all the demons in the world. The Fuli clan was favored by the immortal sovereign, and was once bestowed with 3 of the clan's greatest abilities. One of them was a finger technique called returning to the void finger. This finger technique was specially used for punishment. In ancient times, countless great emperors of the demon race had their cultivation base forcefully erased by the Fuli clan using the returning to the void finger, because they had committed grave crimes. Those who had committed serious crimes even had their existences directly erased, and their Tao destroyed. What the black-robed old man displayed was obviously the returning to the void finger. The returning to the void finger was one of the 3 greatest divine abilities of the Fuli clan. Its destructive power was terrifying. However, even in the Fuli clan, only a few of their ancestors were lucky enough to cultivate it. The memories of the bloodline stopped there. Ning Fan's eyes turned cold. That black-robed old man did not look like a living being. Instead, he looked like an inanimate object. Perhaps he was a ferocious being left behind by a demon ancestor of the Fu Li clan after his death. The only thing that Ning Fan could not figure out was that the body of this black-robed old man actually possessed the power of a second type of wild beast other than the bloodline of the Fu Li clan. Wild beasts did not seem to have any connection with the Fu Li clan. If he couldn't figure it out, there was no need to think about it anymore. The finger of returning ruin could only be cast by the bloodline of the Fu Li clan. It was extremely destructive to living beings other than the Fu Li clan, but to the monster cultivators of the Fu Li clan, its power was negligible. Ning Fan was clearly at the center of the black-robed old man's attack. Logically speaking, his cultivation base should have dissipated the fastest. However, he was the ancestral bloodline monster cultivator of the Fu Li race. The monster blood in his body flowed slowly, and he easily neutralized the power of the finger. He was not afraid of the might of the black-robed old man's finger to the ruins of End. 1 breath, 2 breath, 3 breath, 4 breaths, 5 breaths, 6 breaths. After 10 breaths of time, Ning Fan's cultivation base did not decrease at all. As for all the living beings in this place, their cultivation bases had been weakened to varying degrees. Same race. The black-robed old man's eyes were suddenly filled with confusion. In his opinion, Ning Fan should not be able to withstand this finger attack, given his cultivation base. However, the truth was that this finger did not have any lethality to Ning Fan at all. The only possibility was that Ning Fan himself was a Fu Li cultivator, and the grade of his bloodline was not low. If it was the Fu Li sect, they would be friends and not enemies. The cold glint in his eyes gradually diminished. Eventually, it disappeared without a trace. After dispersing his ability, the tens of thousands of demon shadows returned to one. Then he walked towards Ning Fan step by step. There was no longer any hostility in his eyes. Same race. He approached Ning Fan and raised his hand. His eyes were filled with confusion as he wanted to touch Ning Fan's body. However, just as the black-robed old man's finger touched Ning Fan, his body spontaneously combusted without any fire and turned into white ashes bit by bit. Xianjia and the other demons were shocked. They could not understand why Ning Fan was able to withstand the black-robed old man's ability without suffering any damage. What they could not understand was why the black-robed old man named Nai Fan would suddenly lose all of his hostility towards Ning Fan and withdraw his ability. Xianjia's mind especially could not calm down. During the 10 breaths of time when the black-robed old man activated his ability, 1,000,000 years of his cultivation base was forcefully erased. This was because he was affected by the ruins of End Finger. It was just a small part of it. Ning Fan was at the center of the ruins of End Finger's attack. The amount of damage he suffered should be 100 or even 1,000 times more than what Xianjia suffered. However, his cultivation base was not damaged at all. Why is this young man not afraid of that ferocious creature's ability? Xianjia could not figure it out no matter how hard he tried. He also could not understand why the black-robed old man's finger would turn into white ashes when it touched Ning Fan. The light of the 2 words Nai Fan on the space-penetrating stone dimmed bit by bit. Eventually, only a shallow bloodstain was left. The black-robed old man's eyes became more and more confused. His entire body had turned into white ashes, leaving only his head. His head took a final glance at Ning Fan, and suddenly became clear. This clarity only lasted for a moment, and the head also turned into ashes and dissipated. However, Ning Fan could clearly see that the moment before the old man's head completely disappeared, his eyes actually showed a hint of enlightenment. Eventually, he nodded his head and smiled at Ning Fan. What did he understand? Why did he smile? Impossible. What kind of demonic technique did this young man use to directly turn that ferocious creature into ashes? I've tried it before. That ferocious creature's ability is strange. Ordinary means can't kill it. Xianjia's heart was filled with more and more shock. When he was at his peak, he had used all of his abilities to attack that ferocious creature, but still failed to kill it. However, Ning Fan did not seem to have done anything and he killed that ferocious creature. It was incomprehensible. Xianjia could not understand this scene. Currently, his physical body was already destroyed. Half of his demon soul had also been devoured by that ferocious creature. His cultivation base had been erased by that ferocious creature for 1,000,000 years. The current him was becoming less and less of a match for Ning Fan. In front of Ning Fan's 10 sword attacks, he could not resist at all. Ning Fan cleared all of his distracting thoughts, and put aside the strange matter of the black-robed old man. Currently, he did not have the mood to care about the strange actions of the black-robed old man. He just wanted to take back Xian Xian's primordial spirit, and bring it back. He pressed his 5 fingers forward. The Rain and War 10 swords immediately rushed out, and slashed at the demon ship once again. Ning Fan's body swayed and directly appeared on the demon ship. He turned into a ray of red light, and charged at Xian Jia, following the sword light closely. Any demons that stood in his way were killed by Ning Fan on the demon ship. Xian Jia was terrified. His current body was full of injuries. Even if he were to face Du Zhen, who was slightly stronger, he would not have much chance of winning. How could he be Ning Fan's match? He regretted thousands of times in his heart. He regretted coming to kill Ning Fan aggressively. He regretted summoning the ferocious creature to harm himself. All of his feelings of regret stopped the moment Ning Fan's sword light arrived. His vision turned black. All of his consciousness was lost under the blade of the separation and reunion sword. His demon soul was first penetrated by the separation and reunion sword. Then it was penetrated by the remaining 9 swords. A trace of his demon soul was actually shredded into countless pieces by the 10 swords of Dao Law. All of them were annihilated. Not good. Elder Xian Jia is dead. Let's leave this place at once and report this matter to the 2 immortal venerables. One after another, the demon cultivators fled from the demon ship without any regard for their lives. Ning Fan, however, was not in a hurry to chase after those fleeing demon cultivators. The corners of his lips curled into a cold smile. Dead. No. Xian Jia is not dead yet. The Xian Jia he killed did not have the blood seal in his body. There is a second Xian Jia in this place. Ning Fan snatched Xian Jia's storage pouch and kept it in his hand. Then he activated his 10 sword attacks and forcefully cut the demon ship beneath his feet into countless pieces. In an inconspicuous cabin on the demon ship, an elderly man in gray robes with dragon horns was carefully hiding. He was Xian Jia's second demon soul. If the first demon soul dies, he could replace Xian Jia and continue to live. He was hiding in the cabin. Initially, he wanted to escape from this place after Ning Fan killed Xian Jia. Then he would use Xian Jia's name to take revenge in the future. Unfortunately, the concealment technique that he thought was profound was not worth mentioning at all in Ning Fan's eyes. The demon ship was broken into countless pieces under the frenzied attacks of the 10 swords. Xian Jia's second demon soul also died resentfully and unwillingly. At this moment, he was truly dead. Ning Fan's figure flashed and appeared in front of the corpse of Xian Jia's second demon soul. He clawed with his 5 fingers, and directly extracted the blood seal from the remaining blood and swallowed it. At the moment he swallowed the blood seal, the wild beast army that had submitted to Xian Jia were now filled with confusion. After the confusion, it was their new submission. All of them looked at Ning Fan without any hostility in their eyes. There were originally 200,000 wild beasts under Xian Jia's command. However, after Ning Fan single-handedly killed thousands of low-grade wild beasts, some of them were also killed. The number of wild beasts that Ning Fan brought with him was originally 14,000. However, after the battle he lost a lot of them. Now there were only 8,000 of them left. Naturally, most of them were low-grade wild beasts which were insignificant. At this moment, the number of wild beasts under Ning Fan's control had increased from 14,000 to 200,000. Among these 200,000 wild beasts, there were a total of 45 void-shedding wild beasts. Raising his head, Ning Fan's gaze swept across the demon cultivators who were fleeing in all directions. His eyes flashed with cold light again. These demon cultivators wanted to flee and report what happened here to the demon race's immortal venerables. Unfortunately, Ning Fan would not give them the chance to do so. Leave no one alive. Following Ning Fan's order, the 200,000 wild beasts immediately rushed out and chased after the fleeing demon cultivators. Ning Fan stood on the same spot in the void. After withdrawing the 10 swords and dispersing the secret technique, he finally felt a sense of weakness in his body. His magic power could be constantly replenished through the Great Five Elements physique. However, his injuries had accumulated too much due to the frequent self-harm. It had already exceeded the limit of what he could bear. At this moment, his primordial spirit was on the verge of being severely injured. Not to mention using any of his abilities, it was extremely difficult for him to even fly. He no longer had the mood to collect the spoils of war here. His gaze shifted to the void-piercing stone that was floating at the side. With a flash, he flew to the top of the stone and sat down cross-legged. Ning Fan naturally knew about the void-piercing stone. The two words "Ni Fan" on the stone caught his attention. However, he did not have the mood to study the stone in detail at this moment. He casually took out some pills and consumed them. Then he activated the Black Star technique and slowly healed his injuries. While he was healing his injuries, he took out a green streamer from Xianjia's storage pouch. It was the lightning capturing banner that captured the primordial spirit of the immortal Loli. At this moment, the spiritual light of the lightning capturing banner had almost completely dimmed. The space within it was on the verge of collapsing. It could not stop any spirit sense from probing it. Ning Fan scanned the space within the lightning capturing banner with his spirit sense and immediately became speechless. At this moment, the tiny primordial spirit of the immortal Loli was swimming in a vast sea of lightning within the lightning capturing banner. While swimming, she was devouring the lightning in the sea of lightning, and big mouthfuls and giggles could be heard from time to time. To her, all the lightning in the banner was a rare delicacy, which made her extremely excited. Ning Fan let out a bitter smile and rubbed his forehead. In order to save her, he had almost exhausted all of his strength. His entire body was covered with injuries. She, on the other hand, was eating happily on her own and giggling foolishly. Suddenly, Ning Fan's eyes froze, as if he had seen something unbelievable. Just now he did not pay attention to the changes on the primordial spirit of the immortal Loli. Now that he looked carefully, he realized that there was a flow of sovereign qi on her primordial spirit. This is sovereign qi. Ning Fan took a deep breath. In an instant, countless speculations appeared in his mind. The immortal Loli's primordial spirit had the sovereign qi. Without a doubt, she was an immortal emperor. The immortal Loli belonged to the Extreme Lightning Palace of the Eastern Heaven, and there was only one immortal emperor in the Extreme Lightning Palace. It was the Palace Lord of the Extreme Lightning Palace. His emperor title was White Emperor, and her maiden name was Lan Yunxian. Before the immortal lightning physique evolved, could she be the immortal emperor of the Extreme Lightning Palace? Lan Yunxian. Ning Fan suddenly recalled the words that the immortal Loli had said, and his expression became more and more complicated. Humph! Don't look down on me. I'm really strong. Let me tell you. A few years ago, I even killed a great red-haired devil king. He was very strong. What was his name again? Oh right, he was called Big Mushroom. Before the evolution of this little girl's lightning physique, she seemed to be really strong. Ning Fan remained silent. No one knew what he was thinking about. Sometimes he smiled bitterly and sometimes he sighed. Shaking his head, Ning Fan suddenly realized something. He temporarily forgot about the immortal Loli's identity. With a wave of his hand, he took out a token from his storage pouch. The identity token of a high-grade 6th grade all-having guardian. In the past, he had killed 68 poisonous dragon guards in a row and accumulated countless battle merits. His immortal rank rose from an 8th grade immortal guard to a 6th grade all-having guardian. Today, after killing Xianjia, his immortal rank rose again from a high-grade 6th grade all-having guardian to a low-grade 5th grade golden immortal. Even though Xianjia's cultivation base was suppressed, he was still a mid-thought fragmentation realm expert of the demon race. Killing him would naturally earn him a lot of battle merits. With this battle merit, the advancement of Ning Fan's immortal rank seemed reasonable. In the Four Mysterious Sect, no matter what you do, you must consider the level of your immortal rank. In the Four Mysterious Sect, a low-grade 5th grade golden immortal status was comparable to a thought fragmentation realm old monster. A low-grade golden immortal, huh? Ning Fan shook his head and kept the token. Then he continued to sit cross-legged and recuperate. He did not attach much importance to authority. However, He did not reject the advancement of his immortal rank either. Ning Fan had spent several hours escaping from Xingjia's pursuit. Now that he was recuperating, he actually spent another few hours. A day had passed since the collapse of the desolate lands. The 200,000 wild beasts that chased after the group of demons had already returned. None of the demon cultivators had escaped. Ning Fan sat cross-legged on the void-penetrating stone, still recuperating. The void-penetrating stone constantly released black demonic mist, forming a massive dark cloud that enveloped the group of beasts. Looking from afar, it seemed like Ning Fan was the only person sitting on the void-penetrating stone to recuperate. In the void, a group of human cultivators flew out from one of the life gates and advanced cautiously. This group of cultivators sat on spirit boats. They were not small, and there were tens of thousands of them. On the spirit boat, the person with the highest cultivation base was an early thought-shattering Taoist priest. Due to the immortal forbidding power, he could only use the early shedding void cultivation base. This old Taoist name was Mounzi, and he was a supreme expert of the devil path in the northern heaven immortal world. Mounzi was a vicious and merciless person. What he loved to do the most in his life was to kill people and seize their treasures. This person had killed many people in his life, but he rarely saved people. He was a devil cultivator who cultivated the Tao of slaughter, and had come to the ancient Wildlands sect in order to slaughter demonic cultivators and gain enlightenment from the bottleneck of the mid-thought demolishing stage. Unfortunately, his luck was bad. He had only been in the wilderness for a few years when the wilderness underwent a great change. With the arrival of the Great Tribulation, Mounzi was separated from the human army. His cultivation was suppressed by the power that forbade immortals, so he urgently sought out the two human immortal venerables for protection. He was used to traveling alone, but when he encountered a group of savage beasts alone, he suffered greatly and nearly lost his life. After that, he no longer dared to travel alone. Thus, he gathered the human cultivators along the way and traveled together with them. If they encountered another group of savage beasts, he would have a helper. Along the way, he saved tens of thousands of human cultivators one after another. After saving people, he felt that it was not in line with his ruthless character to save people for free. Therefore, Mounzi would ask for a certain number of Tao gems as a reward for every person he saved. If the human cultivator he saved had a secret treasure and caught his eye, he would directly snatch the secret treasure and put it into his storage pouch. In this way, Mounzi had saved tens of thousands of cultivators along the way, and he had gained a lot from it. He gradually fell in love with this kind of business of saving people and seizing their treasures. While flying, Mounzi's eyes suddenly moved. In front of the spirit boat, there was an incomparably huge dark cloud. From afar, it looked like a coiling dragon. On top of the dark cloud, there was a huge rock. On top of the rock, there was a cultivator who seemed to be recuperating from his injuries. The cultivator was wearing a ghost mask and had a head full of silver hair. His chi was messy, which was enough to show that his injuries were extremely severe. Among the messy chi, the chi that occasionally leaked out was undoubtedly the chi of a human. Moreover, it had reached the mid-duzhen realm, which made Mounzi's eyes brighten. Mid-duzhen. In other words, this person was a mid-shedding void cultivator when he was at his peak. If I save this person, it might be of some use. That thing under his butt is the void-piercing stone. It's really the void-piercing stone. Mounzi gasped. Then his eyes were filled with greed. How could he not know the name of the void-piercing stone? The void-piercing stone could be used to refine high-grade acquired flying magical treasures. It could also be used to cultivate flying secret techniques. Even to the thought-breaking old monster, it was an extremely precious item. With Mounzi's personality, there was no reason for him not to snatch such a precious treasure. I am Mounzi. Devil is the devil of devils. What I love the most in my life is to kill people and seize their treasures. Junior, I'm interested in the void-piercing stone under your butt. If you hand this stone to me, I can show my kindness and spare your life. Moreover, I will allow you to board the ship and help you escape. If you refuse to hand over this stone, don't blame me for being merciless. Mounz stood at the bow of the spirit ship with his hands clasped behind his back. He let out a cold snort. The baleful qi that he had accumulated in his lifetime of slaughtering rushed towards Ningfan. The tens of thousands of cultivators on the spirit ship were shocked when they felt the baleful qi. They were shocked by how many people Mounz had killed. Ningfan was still recuperating. When he heard Mounz's threatening words, he immediately opened his eyes coldly. Even though Mounz had killed many people in his life, most of them were low-grade cultivators. He had never killed a thought-breaking realm cultivator. Thus, his baleful qi naturally could not intimidate Ningfan at all. Ningfan's cold and merciless eyes locked onto Mounz from across the void. Just a glance from him made Mounz's blood run cold. A few hours ago, Ningfan had just killed Xian Jia, who was a mid-thought-breaking realm cultivator. The baleful qi on his body was terrifyingly heavy. Mounz shuddered slightly. He could not imagine that Ningfan's eyes would have such a strong baleful qi and devil might. Are you sure you want to seize my void-piercing stone? Chapter 897. Ningfan's eyes were cold and emotionless as he examined Mounz, who came to seize the treasure. He had always been a person who would not offend others if they did not offend him. If this Mounz insisted on finding trouble with him, he would certainly not show any mercy. With just a glance, he was able to see through Mounz's cultivation base. This person should be at the early thought fragmentation realm when he was at his peak. Now he could only display the strength of an early void-shedding realm cultivator. Ningfan then looked at the spirit boat. It was a 7th Nirvana nascent heaven escape treasure. Mounz came by riding the boat. There were tens of thousands of cultivators on the boat. Most of them had mediocre cultivation bases. Only 10 of them were higher than Duzhen when they were at their peak. Ningfan took a second glance at them, but that was all. Are you sure you want to seize my void-penetrating stone? The baleful qi in Ningfan's eyes was too strong. That baleful qi made Mounz's heart turn cold. If Mounz was not mistaken, the baleful qi on Ningfan's body was still very fresh. He must have killed a mid-thought fragmentation realm cultivator within a few hours. The more Mounz probed Ningfan, the more danger he felt. The string of black jade Buddhist beads on his left wrist suddenly lit up faintly. Out of the 18 Buddhist beads, 11 of them lit up at once. Seeing this, Mounz sucked in a cold breath again. 11 beads? Where did this person come from? How could his devil nature be so strong? The Buddhist beads were a type of magic treasure of the Buddha sect. They were called So I Hear beads. Each of them was refined from the relic of a cultivator of the Buddha sect. They had the ability to detect the devil nature of devil cultivators. The more Buddhist beads lit up, the stronger the devil nature of the cultivator. Normally, the stronger the devil nature of an old monster was, the stronger the devil nature of the cultivator. Such old monsters usually had powerful abilities, and were not to be trifled with. Mounz himself was a devil lord who had killed countless people. His devil nature was extremely strong. However, even with the So I Hear beads, he could only light up 6 Buddhist beads. He had roamed the northern heaven for his entire life, and had seen many old ancestors of the devil path. In the northern heaven immortal world, there were only a handful of people in the thought fragmentation realm who could light up more than 10 Buddha beads, and all of them were peerless fiends in the late thought fragmentation realm or above. They were all people that Mounz couldn't afford to offend. Ningfan was able to make 11 pearls light up. What did this mean? Mounz was secretly shocked. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that Ningfan was hiding his strength. Putting all the signs together, Mounz almost immediately came to the conclusion that Ningfan was not someone to be trifled with. It was unwise to offend him. This person can kill a mid-thought shatterer demonic cultivator, and the devil essence in his body has reached the level of 11th jewels. It's not wise to provoke such a powerful devil just for a space-piercing stone. Mounz's expression changed rapidly. When he looked at Ningfan again, the greed in his eyes was gone. He pretended to be calm, but his heart was filled with anxiety. He cupped his fists towards Ningfan from afar, and answered with a shameless smile. This old man was just joking with fellow Taoist. How could I really try to snatch fellow Taoist's void-piercing stone? Please don't misunderstand, fellow Taoist. Fellow Taoist, you seem to be injured. This old man has some medicinal pills here that I can give to fellow Taoist as a form of good karma. Cough cough. This old man will take his leave first and won't disturb fellow Taoist's recovery. Farewell, farewell. Mounz took out a bottle of pills that he had snatched from somewhere and gave it to Ning Fan with a flick of his finger. Then he hurriedly turned the ship around, fearing that he would make Ning Fan unhappy if he stayed any longer. Trying to get away with today's matter with just a bottle of pills. That's not enough. While fiddling with the pill bottle in his hand, Ning Fan smiled coldly. Suddenly he stood up from the space-piercing stone. A golden light shone under his feet, and he disappeared into the dark clouds together with the space-piercing stone. Almost at the same time, the giant space-piercing stone shone brightly and appeared at the bow of the ship out of nowhere. No one could see how the giant stone appeared. Ning Fan's figure in white robes and red light appeared at the same time. Mounz was the only one who could see Ning Fan's movement technique clearly. What a terrifying speed. It's far beyond my peak. Mounz sucked in a cold breath and groaned inwardly. He was even more convinced that Ning Fan was not someone to be trifled with. When he saw Ning Fan walking towards him step by step, he knew that Ning Fan was going to interrogate him. He thought to himself that he had already given Ning Fan a bottle of pills as an apology. If Ning Fan still finds trouble with him, it would be too overbearing. He could not help but feel a little regretful. If he knew that Ning Fan was powerful earlier, he would never say such harsh words to Ning Fan. He was simply asking for trouble. Even if trouble came to him, Mounz would not be afraid. Even though his heart was beating like a drum, he still put on a strong front and snorted coldly. This old man was just joking with fellow Taoist. I have already given you a bottle of pills as an apology. Fellow Taoist, don't go too far. As he said that, Mounz suddenly released his aura. Tens of thousands of cultivators felt an unbearable scorching heat wherever his aura shrouded. This man's Tao was fire. What he cultivated was not ordinary fire, but black fire. Ning Fan's eyes were slightly startled. The aura of this black fire was actually very similar to the cultivation method of the Black Evil sect. In this world, the Black Evil sect of the Northern Heaven was not the only sect that could cultivate black fire. However, the black fire on Mounz's body was undoubtedly the cultivation method of the Black Evil sect, but it was slightly different. The Black Evil sect was the sect of the Old Devil and also Ning Fan's sect. Looking at the black fire, Ning Fan's eyes revealed a look of reminiscence. His originally cold eyes became slightly warmer, and he asked indifferently, "Your black fire seems to be somewhat related to the Black Evil sect of the Northern Heaven. May I know what is your relationship with the Black Evil sect? Where did you get the technique to cultivate the black fire?" Mounz was startled. He did not expect Ning Fan to ask such a question. He could vaguely see that the hostility in Ning Fan's eyes was reduced when he mentioned the Black Evil sect of the Northern Heaven. Mounz's wretched eyes rolled around. He patted his storage pouch and took out a black token to show Ning Fan. That token was the token of the Black Evil sect of the Northern Heaven. The words Mounz were engraved on it. However, this token was extremely old. It had at least a few million years of history. When I was young, I was acquainted with the previous sect master of the Black Evil sect, Mounz. I was once a nominal guest of the Black Evil sect. Naturally, I know some of the black fire techniques of the Black Evil sect. Mounz. Ning Fan remembered that the master of the Old Devil's master was called Mounz. Mounz, who was standing in front of him, was actually acquainted with one of his ancestors, and was once a guest of the Black Evil sect. Since you are acquainted with the Black Evil sect, let's forget about today's matter. Ning Fan sighed. He was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. However, he was also a person who valued relationships very much. If Mounz was acquainted with the Black Evil sect, he would not seek trouble with him. Mounz secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that it was fortunate that he had spent some time in the Black Evil sect. Otherwise, today's matter would certainly not be settled so easily. Inwardly he muttered to himself. Even though the Black Evil sect had once flourished, It had already declined a long time ago. There were only a few experts left. This Ning Fan seemed to have a close relationship with the Black Evil sect at first glance. However, I wonder what kind of relationship he had with the Black Evil sect. Seeing Ning Fan turning around and wanting to leave, Mounz's eyes rolled and another thought appeared in his mind. Even though this person is injured, he is extremely strong. If he can stay on my ship, I'm sure it will be safer for us to escape. Thinking of this, Mounz immediately urged Ning Fan to stay. Fellow Taoist, you are injured. Why don't you travel with us? We can take care of each other. Travel with us? Ning Fan was slightly stunned. After pondering for a moment, he actually nodded his head and agreed to Mounz's invitation. It was also good to travel with Mounz. Originally, he was going to save venerated immortal Miao Yan. If he travels with Mounz, he would have an additional helper which would increase his chances of rescuing venerated immortal Miao Yan. Fellow Taoist, you are very strong. It's really great that you can travel with me. My name is Mounz. May I know how to address you? Zhao Jian. Ning Fan indifferently gave a fake name. His true identity was too sensitive. It would be fine if he did not wear the ghost mask. However, now that he was wearing it, he really did not want to expose his name too much. So it's fellow Taoist Zhao. Forgive me for not recognizing you. Mounz's eyes narrowed even though he was apologizing. Inwardly, he thought that this name was very unfamiliar, and he had never heard of it before. It was most likely a fake name. However, he did not mind it and asked with a fake smile. Now that the desolate world is facing a calamity, I and my fellow Taoists of the human race are looking for the two venerated immortal Miao Yan and immortal Lu He to seek their protection. I wonder if fellow Taoist Zhao knows where they are now. What a coincidence. I happen to have the whereabouts of venerated immortal Miao Yan in my hands. Ning Fan took out a blank jade slip and engraved a route to the Gate of Life on it. Then he passed it to Mounz. The destination of the Gate of Life was the Gate of Life, which was one realm away from the Gate of Death where venerated immortal Miao Yan was. Mounz was slightly stunned. He was just asking casually. He did not expect that he would really get the information about venerated immortal Miao Yan's whereabouts. He took the jade slip and carefully read it. His facial expression was very deep, and he could not see any expression on it. However, he could still see a hint of doubt in the corner of Mounz's eyes. Fellow Taoist, are you doubting the authenticity of this route? Ning Fan asked with an expressionless face. Fellow Taoist, you must be joking. Now that the desolate world is facing a calamity, we human cultivators should work together in order to preserve our lives. I think fellow Taoist won't give me false information and commit an unwise act like trying to harm me. The doubt in Mounz's eyes did not diminish. However, after pondering for a moment, he still activated the spirit boat and flew towards the direction Ning Fan had given him. I hope that I can really find venerated immortal Miao Yan by following this route. Now that the desolate world was facing a calamity, all the human cultivators wanted to find the two human immortal venerated immortal Miao Yan as soon as possible to seek protection. Mounz was no exception. He formed a hand seal with all 10 of his fingers, and the speed of the spirit boat under his feet gradually increased. This boat was called the Devil Essence Boat. It was a magic treasure that Mounz cultivated with his life. Its grade was at the 7th Nirvana Nascent Heaven Realm. Its speed was rather shocking. However, only Mounz, who was familiar with the spiritual nature of this boat, could control it freely. Fellow Taoist, you can recuperate at the side first. I will bring you to this place to find venerated immortal Miao Yan. Mounz said with a fake smile. All right. Seeing that the speed of the boat was not slow, Ning Fan nodded his head. All of a sudden, he raised his hand and pointed at the space-piercing stone at the bow of the boat. As his finger touched the stone, it gave off a faint light. The dragon-shaped dark cloud in the distant void space immediately moved and drifted towards the spirit boat. As soon as it got close to the boat, hundreds of black mist ropes immediately flew out from the dark cloud and tied themselves to the stern of the boat. The space-piercing power of the space-piercing stone was added to the boat. The speed of the boat immediately increased by a few times. That dark cloud actually attached itself to the back of the boat and moved along with it. Looking from afar, it looked like the boat was dragging the dark cloud forward. In reality, it was the space-piercing stone that was guiding the boat and the group of wild beasts. After doing all this, Ning Fan sat cross-legged under the space-piercing stone and continued to recuperate. Many cultivators on the boat had already exclaimed in surprise, "What are those dark clouds?" Tens of thousands of cultivators on the boat looked at the enormous dark cloud behind the boat. All of them were puzzled. They did not know what those dark clouds were. It was very difficult for ordinary cultivators to see through the dark clouds with their eyes and spirit sense. They could not see the 200,000 wild beasts hiding under the dark clouds. Seeing that the space-piercing stone could actually increase the speed of the boat, Mounz's heart was filled with excitement. At the same time he sighed. Even though he was greedy for this treasure, he did not dare to snatch it anymore. When he looked at the enormous dark cloud behind the boat again, Mounz's eyes turned strange. Inwardly, he wondered why Ning Fan would display his ability and hang such a dark cloud at the stern of the boat for no reason. He activated his ability and used his spirit sense to penetrate the dark cloud. Then he saw the scene inside the dark cloud clearly. However, as soon as he saw it, his expression immediately changed greatly. The blood in his body actually felt like it was flowing in reverse due to the shock. His heart was pounding uncontrollably. He could not believe the scene in front of him at all. There were actually hundreds of thousands of wild beasts hidden inside the dark cloud. Among them, there were 45 void-shedding wild beasts. The cold eyes of the wild beasts were fixed on Mounz, as if they were looking at a delicacy. It made Mounz's scalp go numb, and chills ran down his spine. Mounz roughly estimated that there were at least 200,000 wild beasts in this group. Wild beasts were cruel and bloodthirsty by nature. However, this group of wild beasts were docile and docile. All of them were crawling in the dark cloud. Moreover, all of the wild beasts were crawling in the direction of Ning Fan, as if they were kowtowing to him. It was as if they were obeying his orders. That kind of kowtowing was extremely sincere, as if they were worshipping their own master. Fellow Taoist Zhao, they are. Mounz's heart was beating wildly. He already had a guess, but he just could not believe that it was true. They are my subordinates. What do you think of these subordinates? Can they protect my void-piercing stone? Ning Fan said with deep meaning. After hearing what Ning Fan said, Mounz's entire body was drenched in cold sweat. It confirmed his guess. When he thought of his foolish action of trying to seize the void-piercing stone, he actually felt a lingering fear. Mounz had met some demon cultivators who could control wild beasts along the way. However, it was his first time meeting a human who could control wild beasts. What was more unexpected was that Ning Fan could command 200,000 wild beasts at once, and make so many of them submit to him. If he really turned against Ning Fan earlier, he would probably be torn into pieces by these 200,000 wild beasts. With his current strength, he was definitely not a match for this group of wild beasts. Fortunately, he did not offend Ning Fan to the extreme. Fortunately, he was once a foreign elder of the Black Devil sect. With this layer of relationship, he was able to bury the hatchet between him and Ning Fan. I need to focus on healing my injuries. I won't continue chatting with fellow Taoist. Ning Fan smiled faintly and continued to consume pills to heal his injuries. The injuries on his body were almost healed. However, the loss of blood essence was not that easy to replenish. He might need to cultivate diligently for a period of time before he could recover. Fellow Taoist Zhao, just focus on healing your injuries. With me here, no one can disturb you. Mounz's tone was flattering. However, when he looked at Ning Fan's expression, he became even more cautious. Ning Fan had 200,000 wild beasts by his side. He could not afford to offend Ning Fan. The grade of this spirit boat was not low. With the power of the void-piercing stone, even though it was flying with 200,000 wild beasts, it was still moving at a speed that was close to the breaking of a thought. The void-piercing stone had been tainted by demon blood before. The power of the stone was flawed, and it could only be used for 8 hours at a time. However, after the death of the elderly man named Ni Fan, The demon blood on his corpse had already faded. The flaw had also disappeared. It could now be used continuously. Along the way, Mounz would still lend a helping hand to the human cultivators he met, and ask for Dao crystals from them as a reward. Occasionally, he would also snatch the magic treasures of some of the rescued cultivators. At first, Mounz was worried that his action of snatching treasures would make Ning Fan unhappy. However, when he saw that Ning Fan did not pay any attention to him, he gradually became more courageous. Along the way, he happily saved people and seized their treasures without getting tired. Ning Fan occasionally opened his eyes and glanced at Mounz. Mounz was only saving people and seizing their treasures. He did not kill people to seize their treasures. Thus, he naturally could not be bothered with him. About 2 hours later, Ning Fan let out a long sigh of relief. The injuries on his body were almost fully healed. The baleful qi on his body was also gradually withdrawn. It was no longer as sharp and threatening as before. He glanced at the lightning-capturing banner with his spirit sense. When he saw that immortal Loli was still eating and drinking by herself, he felt speechless. However, he also felt at ease. Whether immortal Loli was an ordinary person or an immortal emperor, it did not change Ning Fan's concern for her. After spending so many years together, his concern for her had already become a habit. After keeping the lightning-capturing banner, Ning Fan's gaze fell on the giant stone in front of him. He stared at the 2 words "I Fan" engraved on it and remained silent. In front of him, the strange actions of the black-robed old man appeared again. That gaze of enlightenment and that friendly smile gave Ning Fan an indescribable feeling. He reached out his palm and pressed it on the space-piercing stone. Immediately, he felt a cold sensation. His heart became even calmer. He could clearly feel each and every trace of the void-breaking power in the space-piercing stone. The void-breaking power could be used to refine high-grade flying escape magical treasures. It could also be used to cultivate secret flying escape techniques. The quality of the space-piercing stone in front of him was extremely high. It was enough to move any thought-breaking old monster. However, Ning Fan did not care about the void-breaking power in the space-piercing stone. What he cared more about was the 2 words "I Fan" engraved on the space-piercing stone. He stared at the 2 words in a daze. Suddenly, he had a strange feeling of time and space intertwining in his heart. That feeling was like looking at the past and the future. It was like looking at the butterfly body of his previous life in the illusions in the past. That feeling was indescribable, but it was unforgettable. The traces of demon blood on the space-piercing stone were already extremely faint. Just as Ning Fan's palm touched the stone, those traces immediately disappeared bit by bit. Ning Fan stared blankly at the disappearing traces of blood. That kind of disappearance was completely erased from samsara. He seemed to have gained some enlightenment, but he did not know what it was. The blankness in his eyes became more and more obvious. The figure of that black-robed old man began to appear in his mind. The Fu Li demon blood began to circulate uncontrollably. Suddenly, he had an illusion that he could not tell whether he was Ning Fan or that black-robed old man. Suddenly, he felt that even though he possessed the Fu Li bloodline in the past, he had never truly unleashed the power of the bloodline. The Fu Li clan was the strongest demon race in the ancient times. Their bloodline was not something that ordinary demon blood could compare to. After their luck was tainted, the bloodline of the Fu Li clan became the dirtiest demon blood in the world. However, its ferocity did not decrease at all. That black-robed old man is the real Fu Li. I'm not. Even though I possess the Fu Li bloodline, I have never allowed it to dominate my body. All along, I have been using magic power as my main source of power in my cultivation. The real Fu Li clan shouldn't be like this. Ning Fan was originally dressed in white robes which were dyed red. However, at a certain moment, his body suddenly emitted rolling black mist. Inside the black mist, Ning Fan's appearance of white robes and silver hair suddenly turned into black robes and black hair. The silver-haired, white-robed man had many powers that were dominated by magical power. The black-haired, black-clothed man's power was dominated by demonic energy. At the moment when he turned into black robes and black hair, even his silver ghost mask turned pitch black. Only his eyes turned purple. At that moment, A soul-stirring ancient demon chi flashed across Ning Fan's body for a split second before disappearing. On the entire spirit boat, only Mounz was able to capture the ancient demon chi that appeared for a brief moment. Pseudo-ancient demon. Mounz's expression immediately changed. Chapter 898. Pseudo-ancient demon. Mounz's expression immediately changed. At his level, he had seen human cultivators who cultivated demon power at the same time. There would always be some powerful cultivators who obtained the skin and core of the ancient revival fruit by chance. From there, their bodies would have the aptitude to cultivate other types of power. However, in those cultivators' bodies, demon power could at most become their vassal. It was extremely weak. However, in Ning Fan's body, his magic power and demon power actually fused perfectly. Moreover, that demon power was actually the demon's spiritual power that only pseudo-ancient demons possessed. The black-haired Ning Fan only appeared for a moment before returning to his original appearance. However, at that moment, Mounz actually felt his breathing stagnate, and his heart palpitated in fear when he saw the black-robed Ning Fan. The white-robed Ning Fan still had some feelings for him. However, the black-robed Ning Fan was like the carrier of all evil, filth and darkness in the world. It was as if even the heavenly Tao had to be ashamed of its inferiority and submit to him. Mounz did not know that the black-robed Ning Fan's evil chi originated from the Fu Li bloodline in his body. Mounz did not know that the Fu Li clan was once the supervisor of the heavenly Tao. The true Fu Li could change the heavenly Tao and reverse the Tao laws with just a wave of their hands. What Mounz did not know was that the Tao laws on Ning Fan's body were all reversed the moment he turned into black robes. Ning Fan only stayed in the black-robed and black-haired state for a moment. However, he clearly felt that he seemed to have the same shocking ability as the black-robed old man. With just a wave of his hand, he could shatter people's magic treasures and erase the Tao laws. At the moment when he turned into black robes, there was a trace of void returning power between his fingers. It was one of the 3 greatest divine abilities of the Fu Li clan. Void returning finger. Void returning makes all cultivations vanish and return to nothingness. Ning Fan closed his eyes and continued to meditate under the void-penetrating stone. Mounz's expression kept changing. He did not know what Ning Fan was comprehending, but he did not dare to disturb him. After another hour, an extremely disheveled figure suddenly flew out from one of the gates of death in front of him. That person was an early thought fragmentation realm old monster, when he was at his peak. Due to a moment of carelessness, he accidentally entered one of the gates of death. Fortunately, just as he took half a step into the gate of death, he sensed that something was wrong and immediately escaped. Otherwise, he would have most likely lost his life in the gate of death. Although he fled extremely quickly, he still suffered many injuries on his body. His clothes were tattered and stained with blood, and he seemed to be in an extremely sorry state. Once the old monster escaped from the death gate, he immediately started cursing. Suddenly, he saw the spirit boat flying toward him. When he scanned the spirit boat with his divine sense, he was immediately overjoyed. Haha, isn't this the Devil Essence arc? Old man Mounz, you don't mind me healing on your spirit boat, right? The old man was originally very far away from the spirit boat, but in a flash, he had already flown onto the spirit boat. On the spirit boat, many cultivators recognized this old monster. He was the patriarch of the Northern Heaven Ku sect, Patriarch Jinhua. Mounz narrowed his eyes in displeasure when he saw that Patriarch Jinhua had come uninvited. However, when he saw this person's miserable appearance, he felt a bit of schadenfreude. Humph! Old man Jinhua, this old man has never had any friendship with you. Why should I let you stay here and heal your injuries? Hee, now that the wilderness is facing a calamity, we human cultivators should share weal and woe together. Even if we don't have any friendship, I don't think you will chase me off the boat, right? With this old man here, isn't your broken boat a little safer? Patriarch Jinhua chuckled, and was about to meditate, ignoring Mounz's slightly ugly expression. However, before he sat down, his eyes lit up when he saw the sky-piercing stone at the bow of the ship. It's the sky-piercing stone. Hee, old man Mounz, You're really lucky to have obtained such a supreme treasure. 500 billion Dao crystals. How about you sell half of this stone to me? To thought-shattering cultivators, Dao crystals were no longer of much use. Many things needed for cultivation couldn't be bought with Dao crystals. It was simply wishful thinking to buy half a sky-piercing stone with 500 billion Dao crystals. This price wasn't high at all. Old ancestor Jinhua licked his lips and looked at Mounz threateningly, as if he would rob him of the stone if Mounz refused to sell it to him. Mounz's eyes immediately turned cold. However, he seemed to have thought of something. Suddenly, he let out a wretched smile and pointed at Ning Fan while saying to old ancestor Jinhua, I'm not the owner of the sky-piercing stone. The owner of this stone is fellow Taoist Zhao. If you want the sky-piercing stone, don't come to me. Fellow Taoist Zhao? Which fellow Taoist Zhao? Old ancestor Jinhua was stunned. Only then did he notice that there was a cultivator with a ghost mask sitting cross-legged at the foot of the sky-piercing stone. He was facing the stone, and seemed to be comprehending something. Even though Ning Fan's injuries had healed, the qi that he was emitting right now was only at the mid-crossing truth realm. Old ancestor Jinhua's heart pounded. He thought to himself that Ning Fan was at most a mid-shedding void cultivator when he was at his peak. Why would Mounz address him as fellow Taoist? With Ning Fan's cultivation base, how is it possible for him to have a supreme treasure like the sky-piercing stone? Could it be that Mounz is lying to me? Old ancestor Jinhua asked doubtfully. Does this sky-piercing stone belong to little friend? So what if it does? When Ning Fan answered him, he did not even open his eyes. He did not even turn his head around. It made old ancestor Jinhua displeased and his tone became a little hostile. May I know your name, your excellency? Zhao Jian. Zhao Jian? I've never heard of you. Old ancestor Jinhua frowned and smiled coldly. Then he said to Ning Fan in a tone that left no room for rejection. 100 billion Dao crystals. Sell this stone to me and I will give you a great fortune. Old ancestor Jinhua stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His expression was like that of an old man. Seeing that Ning Fan's cultivation base was not high, old ancestor Jinhua not only lowered the price but also planned to forcefully buy the entire sky-piercing stone. If it wasn't because this place was Mounz's territory, and he needed to give Mounz face, old ancestor Jinhua would not even pay 100 billion Dao crystals, and would directly snatch the stone from him. He did not put Ning Fan in his eyes at all. I'm not selling it. Ning Fan answered coldly. He continued to treat his injuries and ignored old ancestor Jinhua. Humph. It's not up to you whether you want to sell it or not. Old ancestor Jinhua's eyes darkened. He did not expect that he would be rejected by a junior. Just as he was about to lose his temper, his expression suddenly changed. All of a sudden, Ning Fan opened his eyes. His eyes were originally scarlet, but they suddenly turned into purple demonic pupils. At the same time, Ning Fan's hair and robes turned black. Even his ghost face turned black. He stood up abruptly and turned around. Rolling black mist flowed out from Ning Fan's body and rolled towards old ancestor Jinhua. As it rolled towards him, old ancestor Jinhua's cultivation base was weakened at an insane rate. One breath had reduced 1,000 years of cultivation base. After 3 breaths, old ancestor Jinhua's cultivation base had been reduced by 3,000 years. Such a strange ability was simply unheard of. It caused old ancestor Jinhua's expression to change drastically. His heart raced. In shock and anger, he flipped his hand and took out a small golden mountain, and threw it at Ning Fan. That small golden mountain was old ancestor Jinhua's Dao weapon. It was called Ku because it was missing a corner. As soon as it soared into the sky, it immediately expanded against the wind and fell from the sky. The momentum of its fall was enough to smash any cultivator below the sky-piercing technique into minced meat. Get lost. All of a sudden, a purple-black halo of the Fuli spiritual wheel appeared beneath Ning Fan's feet. The halo rotated with a hissing sound. However, the direction of its rotation was in the opposite direction of the Great Tao. He pressed his 5 fingers against the sky. Black mist immediately soared into the sky. As soon as the golden mountain came into contact with the black mist, It immediately let out a series of rumbling sounds. Countless black cracks appeared on its surface. Its spiritual power was greatly reduced. With a loud bang, it directly exploded into countless golden broken rocks. The rolling black mist then pressed down on old ancestor Jinhua. Looking from afar, it actually gave off a heavy feeling as if black clouds were pressing down on a city. The black mist instantly closed in on him. Old ancestor Jinhua had nowhere to run. Immediately, he let out a series of muffled groans within the thick black mist. His cultivation base was being devoured by the black mist at a crazy rate. 1,000 years of cultivation base would be erased in every breath. Mounzi was greatly shocked. He originally wanted to see old ancestor Jinhua being humiliated in front of Ningfan. However, he did not expect to see such a terrifying ability that could actually erase one's cultivation base. Old ancestor Jinhua, who was inside the black mist, seemed to be suppressed by the power of heaven and earth. He could not move at all. His cultivation base was constantly being erased by the black mist. That kind of feeling was like he was losing his cultivation base step by step, and was walking towards death. Inside the black mist, old ancestor Jinhua suddenly turned his head. To his surprise, he realized that there were actually 200,000 killing intent locked onto him from the dark clouds behind the spirit boat. Old ancestor Jinhua scanned the dark clouds behind the spirit boat with his spirit sense. Immediately, his body trembled. Inside the dark clouds, there were 200,000 savage beasts prostrating themselves. All of them were kneeling in Ningfan's direction with extremely respectful expressions. Seeing this scene, old ancestor Jinhua's heart pounded madly. His face immediately turned pale. How could he not know that other than Ningfan's powerful abilities, he also had several 100,000 savage beasts as his subordinates? What is this Zhao Jian's background? His abilities are actually so terrifying, and he even has 200,000 savage beasts protecting him. Thought fragmentation realm. This person must be at the thought fragmentation realm without a doubt. He must have concealed his cultivation base. We must never offend this person. Mounzi, you're despicable. You clearly know that you can't offend this person, but you didn't tell me and allowed me to provoke him. Your intentions are really vicious. Old ancestor Jinhua's face turned pale. In front of Ningfan, he found it hard to keep his mind calm. Under such a dangerous situation, old ancestor Jinhua gritted his teeth and patted the top of his head. He actually wanted to use his last life-saving method. However, at this moment, Ningfan withdrew all of the black mist with a thought and spared old ancestor Jinhua's life. He did not intend to kill old ancestor Jinhua in the first place. Keeping this person alive could also be a great help to rescue venerated Miao Yan. If you provoke me again, you'll have to bear the consequences. Ningfan withdrew from his black-robed and black-haired form. He faced the space-penetrating stone, and sat down again to continue his comprehension. The black-robed old man who was called Nifan could erase 100,000 years of cultivation base of his enemies with a single finger of the returning void finger. As for Ningfan, he could only erase 1,000 years of cultivation base of his enemies in a single breath. Moreover, after 10 breaths, his divine technique would be broken, and he would not be able to maintain it for long. His comprehension towards the returning void finger was still far from enough. Old ancestor Jinhua looked even more miserable. His eyes were filled with fear when he looked at Ningfan. He understood that Ningfan had shown him mercy. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to survive today. He did not dare to resent Ningfan. Instead, he vented all of his anger on Mounzi. Mounzi, you better remember this. Today you've schemed against me. When I return to the northern heaven in the future, I will certainly not let you go. All right. I'll wait and see how you're not going to let me go. Mounzi smiled wretchedly. His expression was filled with schadenfreude. Ningfan's divine technique and strength had truly shocked him. However, he felt that everything was reasonable. After all, he had already noticed that Ningfan was not someone he could provoke. Old ancestor Jinhua glared at Mounzi again. Then he found a spot at the bow of the ship and began to heal his wounds. When he recalled the divine technique that Ningfan used to erase his cultivation base, he still felt a lingering fear. Such a terrifying divine technique was almost on par with the heaven-suppressing treasure of the northern heaven-lost world palace, the melting pearl. Inwardly, he had made up his mind that no matter what, he must not provoke Ning Fan again. In the future, he must also take a detour when he sees Ning Fan. The spirit ship continued to move forward. After passing through several life gates, many exhausted human cultivators suddenly appeared in front of them. These cultivators were wearing the same attire. Obviously, they belonged to a combat division of the human race. They were heading in the opposite direction of Mounz and the others. Those cultivators were fleeing in panic. When they saw Mounz's spirit ship, they were overjoyed. Mounz stood majestically at the bow of the ship. Some cultivators who recognized him immediately asked for help. We are the combat division under the command of a 6th Unity Immortal Venerable. We are being chased by a blood-soul ferocious beast. 100,000 battle guards are fighting to the death. 2 thought-shattering commanders are risking their lives to kill that ferocious beast. We have to search everywhere for reinforcements. Senior Mounz, please save the 2 thought-shattering commanders. Another cultivator saw old ancestor Jinhua, who was standing at the bow of the ship. He was overjoyed. It's old ancestor Jinhua. There are actually 2 thought-shattering seniors on this ship. With them around, we can definitely save the 2 commanders. When the cultivators on the Demon Essence boat heard the words of these cultivators, all of them sucked in a cold breath. What kind of blood-soul ferocious beast is so powerful that it could actually make 100,000 battle guards flee at the sight of it? Moreover, it could even make 2 thought-shattering commanders fight to the death. Mounz's face twitched. Even though he had saved a lot of people along the way, he was not a kind person. That blood-soul ferocious beast sounded extremely powerful. He was too lazy to get involved in it and save some thought-shattering commanders whom he did not know. Wouldn't it be a waste if he lost his life just to save them? Old ancestor Jinhua shook his head repeatedly. He was also unwilling to put himself in danger for unrelated people. Only Ning Fan's eyes flickered. He stood up and asked those cultivators who were asking for help through telepathy, "Where did you encounter the ferocious beast?" Those cultivators did not know who Ning Fan was. However, when they saw Ning Fan standing together with Mounz and old ancestor Jinhua, they assumed that he was also a legendary expert of the human race. Thus, they naturally did not dare to be negligent. They respectfully took out a jade slip with a map and answered. The place where we encountered the ferocious beast has already been marked on the jade slip. Senior will know after taking a look at it. Ning Fan received the jade slip and scanned through it with his spirit sense. His face immediately darkened. The place where the group of human cultivators encountered the blood-soul ferocious beast was on the way to rescue venerated Miao Yan. Ning Fan was not concerned about the 2 thought-shattering commanders who stopped the ferocious beast. What he was concerned about was the safety of Zhao Dai, and the others. The broken continent that Zhao Dai, and the others were on was flying in that direction. If they encounter that blood-soul ferocious beast. When you came here, did you see a broken continent that was covered with golden light? Ning Fan suddenly asked. Yes. The 2 thought-shattering commanders led the army to fight the ferocious beast to the death in order to protect the cultivators on that broken continent. Those cultivators answered respectfully. Upon hearing their words, Ning Fan's expression immediately changed. With a tap of his feet, he directly disappeared from the bow of the ship with the void-piercing stone. Stepping on the stone, he flew into the void. The massive dark cloud behind the spirit ship suddenly dispersed. 200,000 ferocious beasts flew out under Ning Fan's will. They were densely packed like a swarm of locusts. He did not care about the lives and deaths of the others. However, he must save Zhao Dai and the others. Before he left the broken continent, he had left an imprint of the reverse spirit technique on it. Until now, that imprint was still intact. Presumably, their lives were not in danger yet. However, now that the blood-soul ferocious beast had set its eyes on them, Heaven Barbarian City was probably not safe at the moment. Carrying 200,000 ferocious beasts, Ning Fan stepped on a golden rainbow and dashed forward. The 10,000 ferocious beasts followed closely behind him. They broke through the sky and dashed forward. That scene was just too shocking. Be it the tens of thousands of cultivators on the Devil Essence ship, or the lone cultivators who came to seek help. All of them were tongue-tied and speechless. When they saw the 200,000 ferocious beasts again, Mounz and old ancestor Jin Hua's hearts beat wildly. However, because they had seen it before, they were much calmer than the others. What should we do? Should we follow them? Old ancestor Jin Hua asked Mounz with a solemn expression. Let's follow them. Since fellow Taoist Zhao wants to go, it's better for us to follow them and have a look. No matter how strong that blood-soul ferocious beast is, with fellow Taoist Zhao's 200,000 ferocious beasts at the front, we should still be very safe. What else can we do if we don't follow them? Mounz looked at the map Jade Slip. The direction indicated by the Jade Slip was exactly the route to find venerated Miao Yan. They had no choice but to follow them. Speaking of which, if venerated Miao Yan is really in front of us, why didn't these people ask for help from venerated Immortal, but me instead? If venerated Immortal is really in front of us, that blood-soul ferocious beast wouldn't be able to act recklessly no matter how strong it is. Is venerated Miao Yan really on this route? Mounz once again doubted the authenticity of Ning Fan's information. However, he had no choice but to believe it. He activated the Devil Essence ship and carried the cultivators on it, following closely behind Ning Fan and the group of ferocious beasts. Inwardly, he could only pray that he would be able to find venerated Miao Yan and save his life. Chapter 899. As soon as he learned that the Heaven Barbarian city was in trouble, he immediately rushed towards the city without stopping. His face was filled with worry. He was worried about the safety of the people in the city. At the same time, in different locations, there were also people in other areas of the wild broken world, who wore the same worried expression as Ning Fan. Old ancestor Poisonous Dragon's face was filled with worry. Currently, he was sitting cross-legged on a continent filled with demon cultivators, trying his best to heal his injuries. Venerated Ao Xian was sitting beside him. He was also healing his injuries with a gloomy expression. It had been more than a day since the blood sacrifice ceremony began. Both of their injuries were caused by entering the gate of death by mistake. Their injuries were extremely serious, and they could not use their demon power recklessly for the time being. Every once in a while, a report would be sent to the two venerated demons. Before they read the report, their faces were filled with anticipation. However, after reading the report, they were always disappointed. Still can't find them. Can't we find any of the 7 barbarian statues? Another disappointing report was sent back. Venerated Ao Xian's face was filled with anger. He directly crushed the jade slip that contained the report. His face immediately turned abnormally red due to his anger. Old ancestor Poisonous Dragon's expression was extremely unpleasant. He kept activating the compass in his hand. The needle of the compass spun randomly, but it could not point to a certain direction. I still can't find them. I can't sense anything at all. Damn the human race. It's all because of the heaven-sealing immortal edict. Old ancestor Poisonous Dragon said viciously. In the minds of the two venerated demons, the blood sacrifice ceremony was supposed to be a success. However, they never expected that the human race would activate the heaven-sealing immortal edict at a critical moment to resist. In order to awaken the passage to the ancient realm of heavenly desolate in the wild world, the demon race prepared 7 ancient statues which corresponded to the 7 barbarian ancestors. Each of the ancient statues was indispensable to awaken the passage. However, as the heaven-sealing immortal edict sealed the wild world, the 2 venerated demons and the 7 ancient statues fell into different gates of life and were separated from each other. One day later, Ao Xian and old ancestor Poisonous Dragon reunited. However, they had lost the 7 ancient statues and had yet to find them until now. In another 6 days, the power of the heaven-sealing immortal edict will be exhausted. At that time, I'll need at least 1 ancient statue in order to carry out the 3rd revolution of the ancient statue and summon the ancient passage of the ancient desolate ancient realm. I'm afraid it's impossible to find all 7 ancient statues. We have to find at least one. It would be best if he could find the seventh ancestor's ancient statue. The seventh ancestor's blood soul had been condensed for a long time, and was the strongest. Before the other 6 ancient statues were lost, their blood souls had yet to condense, so their power was too weak. But judging from the time, the other 6 ancient statues should be condensing their blood souls by now. Just as Forefather Poison Dragon was worrying about the ancient statues, his subordinate suddenly sent another battle report. The content of this battle report had nothing to do with the ancient statue. It said that the life token of the true Dragon Clan's elder, Xian Jia, was shattered and he had most likely died in battle. Xian Jia is dead? With 200,000 savage beasts by his side, who in the wilderness could possibly kill him? Could it be a human immortal venerable? Forget it, Xian Jia's life or death is only a small matter. The most important thing now is to retrieve the ancient statue. The only fortunate thing was that the 7 rubies embedded in the compass were still shining. The 7 rubies represented the safety of the 7 ancient statues. If any of the ancient statues were destroyed, the corresponding rubies would dim. As long as the 7 ancient statues were not destroyed and were still in the wilderness, there was a high chance that they could find 1 or 2 of them within 6 days. Forefather Poison Dragon threw the battle report down, and said coldly to the demon cultivator, who came to report. Continue searching. If you can't find the whereabouts of the ancient statues, you don't need to come back. Yes. On a certain broken continent that was covered in flames, spirit boats were entering and leaving the place. The flames were a defensive grand formation that was personally set up by 6 combination Immortal Venerable. A day had passed since the blood sacrifice ceremony in the wilderness. 6 combination Immortal Venerable was severely injured, and was currently recuperating on this broken continent. He would activate the communication jade slip from time to time, hoping to contact Wise Words Immortal Venerable and meet up with him. However, a day had passed and he was still unable to contact Wise Words Immortal Venerable. This is troublesome. Fellow Taoist Wise Words' whereabouts are unknown. I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to protect the cultivators of the human race to survive this calamity. From time to time, battle reports would be sent to 6 combination Immortal Venerable. Every time he received a battle report, he would know that another almighty cultivator of the human race had fallen in the calamity. Report. Fairy Luoling Suluo has fallen in battle. She is the 4,874th life immortal cultivator to fall in this calamity. Report. Devil Lord Scarlet Moon has fallen in battle. She is the 216th crossing truth cultivator to fall in this calamity. Report. Forefather Tian Yuan has fallen in battle. This is the 6th thought-shattering forefather to fall in this calamity. Report. 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 Not a single battle report was good. All of them were bad. Occasionally, there would be battle reports of searching for Wise Words Immortal Venerable. However, those reports were all about not being able to find him. I've received reliable information. Those damn demon cultivators have already colluded with the savage beasts. During this calamity, the entire wilderness was affected by the forbidden immortal force. All the cultivators of the human race had their cultivation base suppressed. Although the cultivation base of those demon cultivators was also suppressed, they could use the blood restriction to control the savage beasts. However, the cultivation base of those savage beasts wasn't suppressed at all. With the help of the savage beasts, the demon race is almost a one-sided massacre against the human race. This is extremely detestable. 6 combination Immortal Venerable's eyes were cold. He had already become numb to the bad news from the battle reports. Suddenly, a different battle report came, which surprised him quite a bit. Report. Tablet Guardian Commander Qin Fei has something to report. On the battle service tablet, there's a senior who killed the enemy demon Xian Jia. He has been promoted to a 5th grade low-grade golden immortal. Upon hearing the battle report, 6 combination Immortal Venerable exclaimed softly. Xian Jia? Is it that Xian Jia who is an elder of the true Dragon Clan? 6 combination Immortal Venerable asked in surprise. Yes. Lai Xiu reported respectfully. 6 combination Immortal Venerable's eyes flickered. Based on what he knew, the experts of the true enlightenment realm, and above of the demon race had a large number of savage beasts following them during this calamity. The higher the cultivation base, the more savage beasts would follow them. For example, Wuxia, the thought-shattering old monster, had at least hundreds of thousands of savage beasts following him. Under such circumstances, the fact that someone could kill Wuxia was enough to prove that the person was extraordinary. What's the name of the new low-grade golden immortal? 6 Combination Immortal Venerable asked with slight interest. In reply to Immortal Venerable, this new golden immortal is the nameless senior, who killed the poison dragon guards back then. Oh, it's him? 6 Combination Immortal Venerable was moved as he recalled the past. Back then he had also paid attention to that nameless cultivator. He remembered that the nameless cultivator had been shot by Patriarch Poison Dragon with the 7 Truths 7 Illusions arrow, but was not killed. What a pity. If it wasn't because of the changes in the wilderness, I would be very interested in finding this person and recruiting him for my own use. Forget it, forget it. Now that the human race in the wilderness is facing a calamity, I can't even protect myself, let alone expanding my forces. By the way, where are the 6 combat divisions under me? 6 Combination Immortal Venerable suddenly asked. The reporting cultivator stuttered. In reply to Immortal Venerable, among the 6 combat divisions, Inhai, Maosu, and Chenyu have returned 2 hours ago. Xishan and Wu Wei are also on their way back. Only Zichou Combat Division. How is Zichou Combat Division? Finish it at once. 6 Combination Immortal Venerable's face darkened. In reply to Immortal Venerable, according to Zichou Combat Division's report, they are currently fighting with an unknown savage beast in order to rescue a small group of cultivators. They have suffered heavy casualties and are unable to escape. Nonsense. They are sacrificing so many lives just to save a small group of people. When did Teng Nan and Teng Bei become so stupid? Quickly contact the 2 of them and order Zichou Combat Division to return immediately. Give up on rescuing that small group of cultivators. No mistakes are allowed. In reply to Immortal Venerable, something happened to Zichou Combat Division half an hour ago. We can no longer get in touch with them. What did you say? 6 Combination Immortal Venerable was enraged and smashed the jade table in front of him. After a long silence, he finally said coldly to the reporting cultivator with a gloomy face, "Forget it. The matter regarding Zichou Combat Division can no longer be salvaged. You can leave now." 6 Combination Immortal Venerable dismissed the reporting cultivator and continued to treat his injuries without saying a word. However, any cultivator accompanying him could tell that 6 Combination Immortal Venerable was in an extremely bad mood. There were 6 elite combat divisions under 6 Combination Immortal Venerable's command. They were named after the 6 combinations of the 12 Earth branches. Zichou Combat Division was the most elite among the 6 combat divisions. It had a full complement of 120,000 people. Although it was not full, it still had 100,000 people. The commanders of the combat division were 2 early thought-shattering old monsters. The left commander, Teng Nan, and the right commander, Teng Bei, were both experts from the Southern Heaven Immortal World. They were twin brothers who were proficient in joint attacks. In the Southern Heaven Immortal World, they were known as the second patriarch of the Teng family. In the previous realm war, Zichou Combat Division, under the leadership of Teng Nan and Teng Bei, specifically killed the powerful figures of the demon race. On the day of the battle, the skulls of the second-step demon experts they killed were piled up into a tower of human skulls that was hundreds of feet tall. Once the news spread, the demon cultivators of the wilderness were terrified. It was such a powerful combat division. However, at this moment, Zichou Combat Division was completely defeated by a bloody ferocious beast. In the void, more than 100,000 cultivators in rattan armor kept activating their talisman swords. With the power of the sword formation, they fought to the death without retreating. There was only one enemy. It was a strange-looking bloody ferocious beast. The ferocious beast had 2 heads and a huge body. From afar, it looked like a small cultivation planet. Its body was illusory and transparent. The aura of this ferocious beast wasn't very strong. It was only equivalent to the mid-stage of shedding void. However, with this level of cultivation, it was able to defeat the 100,000 cultivators of Zichou Combat Division. The 100,000 cultivators activated the sword formation. A huge formation diagram appeared in the void. Countless sword lights slashed down. When the sword lights hit the ferocious beast, they directly passed through the ferocious beast's body. They didn't leave any injuries. Tung Nan and Tung Bei, the two commanders of the combat division, were thought Shatterer cultivators. Although their cultivation levels were suppressed by the celestial seal, their spells were not to be underestimated. The two of them kept activating their spells to attack the ferocious beast. However, even their spells would pass through the ferocious beast's body. They couldn't cause any damage. Where did this ferocious beast come from? Why can't all our spells hurt it? Tung Nan and Tung Bei's expressions were extremely ugly. Suddenly, the ferocious beast's tail swept toward them. The two of them tried their best to block it, but they were still swept away by the ferocious beast's tail. They coughed up blood and retreated. The ferocious beast opened its mouth and spat out a brutal flash. The purity of the brutal flash was much higher than that of a normal ferocious beast. The black and red brutal flash continuously tore through the sky. Each of its attacks would pierce through the sword formation and take away the lives of hundreds of cultivators. As time passed, the casualties of Zichou Combat Division had already reached 30%. Those who were fighting against the ferocious beast were not only the cultivators of Zichou Combat Division, but also the cultivators of Heavenly Barbarian City. Far away from them, there was a broken continent that emitted golden light. It was the continent where Heavenly Barbarian City was located. In the sky, Earth Devil and Iron Crow Daoist were constantly attacking the Blood Soul ferocious beast with their spells. Both of them used to be immortal venerables. When they used their spells, they were extremely profound. However, they couldn't hurt the ferocious beast at all. Fairy Hanwu, Four-Eyed Devil Monarch, Tong Air and thousands of cultivators who were saved by Ning Fan were currently fighting against the ferocious beast. Even though there were a lot of them, none of them could hurt the ferocious beast. This scene was too strange. It was as if the ferocious beast was immune to all damage. On the broken continent, immortal concubine Zhang Yu's face was pale and bloodless. Watching the battle in front of her, she was inwardly shocked. When she was at her peak, she was once a nine-tribulation immortal emperor. However, even with her eyesight, she could not see through the origin of this ferocious beast. She did not understand why this beast was immune to all damage. Currently, because she had used the piercing golden light too much, her broken divine body had already suffered a severe backlash. Her chi was as weak as a candle in the wind. Thus, she could not participate in the battle. A few hours ago, Ning Fan left the broken continent in order to snatch back the primordial spirit of the immortal Loli. Before he left, he ordered her to use the piercing golden light to fly with the broken continent despite the backlash. Of course, immortal concubine Zhang Yu was unwilling to carry out this order. How could she bear to hurt herself for Ning Fan? Unfortunately, her body was under the tribulation restriction, and she could not control it. Thus, she carried out Ning Fan's order loyally. Damn it! After using the piercing golden light for a few hours consecutively, my primordial spirit's backlash is extremely severe. I almost can't use any magic power anymore. It's all that little thief's fault for giving me such an order. Hasn't that little thief finished his business yet? Why isn't he back yet? I hope he doesn't die outside. There was only one reason why immortal concubine Zhang Yu was concerned about Ning Fan's life. There was one thing about the tribulation restriction that was very similar to the ordinary mental restriction. If Ning Fan died, she would also be implicated and die. She did not have any feelings for Ning Fan. Naturally, she would not really care about him. In this place, only Zhao Dai or Lu Yan and Fairy Hanwu would really worry about Ning Fan's safety. Uncle, where did you go? Will you be in danger? Uncle, why haven't you come back yet? That ferocious beast is really scary. No one can hurt it. Perhaps only you can hurt it and save us. Zhao Dai had an almost blind trust in Ning Fan. She was not a cultivator and did not know how to judge the level of one's cultivation realm, or the strength of one's abilities. What she saw was that even the combined forces of more than 100,000 cultivators could not hurt that blood-soul ferocious beast. She stubbornly believed that as long as Ning Fan returned, he would be able to kill the ferocious beast and save her time and time again. In her eyes, Ning Fan was always omnipotent. "Senior, did you go to bring back Xianxian's primordial spirit? Why aren't you back yet? If you come back and find me dead, will you shed a tear for me?" Lu Yan looked at the sky blankly. In her mind, she could not help but recall the scenes when she met Ning Fan. That year, he brought her away from the 3,000 Thunder Realm. Her identity was his weapon spirit. That year, she accompanied him to comprehend the Tao in the desolate land. Her identity was his Tao companion. However, that Tao companion was fake. She had already completed the harmonious spirit starplate. To Ning Fan, she was probably no longer of any use. If she dies, would Ning Fan care? Would he? She did not have the confidence to make Ning Fan shed a tear for her. Neither did she dare to hope for it. Her heart that was filled with thoughts turned into a faint sigh. Fairy Han Wu kept waving her moonlight rays to attack the vital parts of the blood-soul ferocious beast. Unfortunately, all her attacks passed through the beast's body without any exception. She could not cause any substantial damage to it. This ferocious beast was actually immune to all kinds of damage. It gradually made her feel helpless. If fellow Daoist Ning is here, he might have a way to deal with this beast. The things that he does are always unexpected. Unknowingly, Fairy Han Wu could not help but think of Ning Fan, even though she knew that she could not be distracted while fighting the ferocious beast. When she thought of Ning Fan's solemn expression when he left in a hurry, her eyes could not help but be filled with worry. That worried expression was woken up by a beast roar, and she came back to her senses. She bit her lips and continued to wave her moonlight rays to attack the ferocious beast. She still could not hurt the ferocious beast. No one could hurt it. The blood-soul ferocious beast would not get hurt. However, cultivators of the human race were dying continuously. The casualties were getting heavier and heavier. This battle seemed to have become a one-sided massacre by the blood-soul ferocious beast. When the number of cultivators who died was less than 60,000, the cultivators finally became timid. They no longer dared to fight the beast and wanted to retreat. At this moment, Tung Nan and Tung Bei's faces were filled with regret. If they knew that this ferocious beast was so strange, they definitely would not have been so careless to save the cultivators of Heaven Man City. In the beginning, the ferocious beast only noticed Zhao Dyer and the others. It chased after them all the way to Heaven Man City. Tung Nan and Tung Bei happened to pass by with Zichou Combat Division. When they saw that there was only one ferocious beast, and its chi was only at the mid-void shedding realm, they decided to save them. Who would have thought that this ferocious beast's ability was so strange that it could be immune to all harm? In this way, the cultivators had no chance of winning against the ferocious beast. If they continued to fight, they would only increase the casualties. Retreat. This beast is too strong. If we continue to fight, we will only increase the casualties. Tung Nan gritted his teeth and transmitted his voice to Tung Bei. As soon as he heard the message, Tung Bei immediately nodded in agreement. He had been fighting with the ferocious beast for a long time, and his injuries were not light. If they continued to fight, not only would Zichou Combat Division die, even he himself might die. Before the two of them could give the order to retreat, the blood-soul ferocious beast seemed to have seen through their thoughts. It sneered like a human, and actually spoke human language. Hee, foreign cultivators, don't you think it's a little too late to leave now? Today, no one is allowed to leave. All of you will become my food. The blood-soul ferocious beast suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a blood-colored ball of light that was the size of an inch. As soon as the ball of light appeared, it immediately grew with the wind and directly enveloped the battlefield within a radius of 100,000 li within a blood-colored light screen. Even the broken continent where Tianman City was located was enveloped within the light screen. Some human cultivators didn't know that the blood-colored light screen had left and wanted to break through it to escape. However, once they touched the light screen, they all turned into ashes and dissipated. Not good. Don't touch this light screen, it's a barrier. Tung Nan and Tung Bei gasped. The barrier in front of them was too powerful. Even with their cultivation, they couldn't break through it and escape. The two of them immediately gave the order for all the combat divisions to attack at the same time and create an opening in the barrier. 60,000 cultivators attacked at the same time. Waves of divine abilities struck the barrier, but without exception, all the divine abilities passed through the barrier and were unable to damage it. This barrier actually didn't have a physical body. If divine abilities couldn't hit the barrier, and if magical treasures hit the barrier, they would immediately turn into ashes. If a person touched the barrier, they would die for sure. Everyone was trapped in the enchantment. No one could escape the enchantment, and no one could hurt the blood-soul-fierce beast. A portion of the mortals in Tianman City knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the beast because they were afraid of death, continuously begging for their lives. When the beast heard the pleas, it only made it smile even colder and more impatient. Whoever cries, I will kill that person first. You barbarians, it is your honor to die in my hands. Why are you crying? I am Fan Lianxiu, the 6th-generation barbarian ancestor of the Burish land. Barbarians are born to be the servants of the barbarian ancestors. When the master kills the servant has no choice but to obey. When the servant dies for the master, it is an honor. To be able to become blood food for the ancestor, all of you should smile in the underworld. Fan Lianxiu's cold and emotionless voice traveled into Tianman City. All the barbarians were stunned. The human cultivators might not know what the name Fan Lianxiu represented, but as barbarians, who didn't know who Fan Lianxiu was? The 6th-generation barbarian ancestor, Fan Lianxiu. He was known as the most benevolent barbarian ancestor in the history of the barbarians. According to the Boar Ancestral Sutra, the 6th Boar ancestor was benevolent and was a role model for all living beings. According to the Boorish Ancestor Sutra, the 6th Boorish ancestor had once encountered a starving beggar. He pitied the beggar's suffering and cut off his flesh to feed the beggar, saving him. The Barbarian Ancestral Sutra recorded that the desolate lands had once faced a calamity. It was attacked by otherworldly beasts, and the 6th barbarian ancestor sacrificed his life to save the people. He died in battle for the desolate lands. According to the Boar Ancestral Sutra, the 6th Boar ancestor had made a vow to never harm a single barbarian in his life. I don't believe it. How could this beast be the 6th barbaric ancestor? The 6th barbarian ancestor died fighting for us barbarians a long time ago, and he would never bear to harm any of us. This beast is definitely not the 6th barbarian ancestor. The barbarians raised their heads in anger. They did not believe that the cold and heartless beast in front of them was the most benevolent ancestor in the history of the barbarians. They had read the Boar Ancestral Sutra from a young age, and believed that everything recorded in it was true. They did not believe that the real 6th Berserker ancestor would do anything to harm the barbarians. They didn't believe it. The blood-soul beast snorted in disdain. With a sweep of its mouth, it repelled the attacks of the cultivators. Then, it activated its divine power and a blood-red light immediately appeared around it. Within the crimson light, his body swayed, and he transformed into a two-headed blood-soul elder. The elder was clearly far away from Heaven Barbarian City, but he seemed to have been born with a divine power. As long as he stood there, any barbarian who had once believed in him could see his face clearly. His appearance was no different from the statue of the 6th barbarian ancestor worshipped in the barbarian temple. In his bloodline, when he faced the barbarians, he was born with the suppressive force of a superior. The moment the suppressive force spread, all the barbarians felt a pain in their knees and knelt on the ground. In this world, only the 7th barbarian ancestor could make all the barbarians kneel down with the suppressive force of their bloodline. Countless barbarians were dumbfounded. They did not want to believe it, but they had to. The blood soul in front of them was the 6th barbarian ancestor that the barbarians had worshipped for generations. The Boar Ancestral Sutra is just a tool for us barbarian ancestors to fool the masses. It's funny that you barbarians actually believe the stories recorded in it. What a joke. I once died. I did not die to protect the wilderness, but to perform a blood sacrifice in the wilderness, and to slaughter all living beings. Just this blood sacrifice of the wilderness was part of my wishes. That's why I was able to reach an agreement with the demons. Do you all know that? If I didn't say it, you might not have understood it even in death. What a bunch of pitiful ants. Fan Lianxiu sneered as he casually reaped the lives of the cultivators. The Boer Ancestral Sutra was just a tool to fool the masses and collect incense offerings. The stories recorded in it were just a scam. What they saw might not be true, and what they heard might not be false. Any cultivator with a bit of cultivation could understand that, but mortals might not be able to understand it their entire lives. Everything was just a scam. The faith in the hearts of countless barbarians completely collapsed at that moment, leaving nothing behind. Everything was just a scam. The sixth barbarian ancestor was not a kind person. Instead, he had performed a blood sacrifice in the wilderness and slaughtered all living beings. The deaths of countless barbarians were also related to the sixth barbarian ancestor. Some of the younger barbarians revealed looks of grief and indignation. They could not believe that the person who destroyed their families was the barbarian ancestor, whom they had believed in for their entire lives. Some of the elderly barbarian monks in Heavenman City began to cry with sorrowful expressions. That cry was a sign of disappointment. There was nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart, and the collapse of their dreams. What they had believed in for their entire lives was just a scam. Zhao Dyer's pretty face was pale. She bit her lips so hard that they were bleeding, but she did not feel the pain. She had been a barbarian monk for decades and taught countless mortals to believe in the barbarian ancestor. So it was all wrong. So everything recorded in the Boer Ancestral Sutra was fake. So everything she believed in was fake. Fake. It was all fake. Who was the one who came to save the barbarians when they were in trouble? It was not the barbarian ancestor. Not only did the barbarian ancestor not save the barbarians, he even treated them like pigs and dogs and killed them. From today onwards, I Zhao Dai, will no longer believe in any barbarian ancestor. From today onwards, I Zhao Dai will only believe in one person. He is more trustworthy than any other faith. Zhao Dai made a vow on the city wall as if she was making a vow. Her words contained a trace of Joss flame power. Although her voice was not loud, it was clearly heard by every barbarian. The eyes of those barbarians who had lost their faith lit up. At this moment, Ning Fan's figure appeared in front of them. Their lives were all saved by Ning Fan. Compared to the cold and heartless barbarian ancestor, it was better to believe in Ning Fan. It's just the faith of ants. It's fine if I don't want it. Fan Lianxiu's eyes were filled with disdain. His body turned into a black-red aurora and flashed in front of the group of cultivators. Every time he appeared, he would attack violently and reap the lives of hundreds of people. At this rate, all the cultivators in the barrier would die sooner or later. Are we going to die here today? Tung Nan and Tung Bei's faces were filled with despair. Fan Lianxiu's eyes became colder and more emotionless. At this moment, his blood-soul body was extremely special. In the second step, there were only 3 types of power that could hurt him. One was the power of samsara, another was the power of tribulation sense, and the last one was the Joss flame. It must not be an ordinary Joss flame. It must be the Joss flame of slaughter which had the strongest killing intent. Other than that, no other abilities could hurt him. Even if an immortal emperor attacked him, the result would be the same if he did not use these abilities. When Fan Lianxiu was at his peak, he was a quasi-saint realm expert. Even though he had been dead for many years and only his blood soul was left, he was still not someone that could be hurt by ordinary means. Cultivation realm was not everything. Unless it was a special ability, it would not be able to hurt him. Not a single one of these ants can hurt me. No one can stop my plan to be reborn. In the past, I failed the blood sacrifice in the desolate world. My power was able to break through the desolate world, and I became a tribulation spirit of the Tide Song world. After I died, I found out that everything was a lie made by the tribulation spirits of the upper world. I lied to the mortals and ants. Those damn tribulation spirits of the upper world were also lying to me. After my rebirth, I will definitely reopen the passage to the Heaven Wasteland world, and kill my way to the upper world to take revenge on those tribulation spirits. No one can stop my plan to take revenge. Fan Lianxiu shuttled through the crowd of cultivators. He was having a great time killing the tribulation spirits when he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. A dangerous figure was approaching him from a great distance away. Before the figure arrived, his murderous intent had already locked onto him. His current blood soul was only afraid of 3 different abilities. He was afraid of the power of samsara. The murderous intent contained the power of samsara. He was afraid of the Joss flame of slaughter. The murderous intent contained the Joss flame of slaughter too. Luckily, the person's samsara force and the Joss flame of slaughter were extremely weak. Even if the murderous intent managed to hurt him, it could not hurt him too deeply. However, the person also possessed the power of the tribulation spirits of the Taitsong sect. The power of the tribulation spirits was not ordinary. It was a 6-star tribulation spirit of the Taitsong sect. It was too easy to kill Fan Lianxiu with his blood-soul body at such a level. Who is this person? Whatever I'm afraid of, he has it. It's like he's my nemesis. We can't stay here any longer. Let's go. Fan Lianxiu was incomparably arrogant just now. However, the moment he sensed the murderous intent of the person who was approaching him, his face turned pale with fright. He immediately removed the bloodlight barrier and turned into a ray of bloodlight, fleeing for his life. However, before he could get far, a horde of wild beasts that blotted out the sky and covered the earth had already arrived at this place. Each of them was extremely ferocious. In front of the horde of wild beasts, there was a cold and indifferent figure who was clad in white robes and red light. Without any unnecessary words, Ning Fan immediately dashed towards Fan Lianxiu as soon as he appeared. This Fan Lianxiu had cultivated the ominous cultivation method. After killing someone, he wanted to run away. How could there be such an easy way in this world? Chapter 900. It's Uncle. Uncle is back. Zhao Dai loosened her tightly clenched lips and shed tears of joy. Lu Yan looked at the sky in a daze. When she saw Ning Fan's figure, she immediately felt relieved. Senior is back. The long street of the heavenly barbarian city was filled with barbarians. All of them were extremely excited. When they were being chased by the 6th-generation barbaric ancestor and were on the verge of despair, Ning Fan returned. Ning Fan had returned with an army of 200,000 savage beasts. The roars of the 200,000 wild beasts were as loud as thunder. Ning Fan stepped on the space-piercing stone beneath his feet and immediately leaped up, flying straight towards Fan Lianxiu. Fan Lianxiu, who was initially extremely arrogant, actually fled in panic. This scene was witnessed by all living beings, and no one wasn't shocked. In the sky, the cultivators who were fighting against Fan Lianxiu exclaimed, "Who is this ghost-masked cultivator? He actually brought 200,000 savage beasts to this place. Could he be a powerful expert of the demon race?" "No, he's not a demon cultivator. He's a human cultivator. I didn't expect that there would be a senior who could command savage beasts in our human race. Moreover, there are actually hundreds of thousands of savage beasts under his command. Why did that ferocious beast run away? Could it be that it's afraid of this ghost-masked senior?" Exclamations of shock could be heard everywhere. Tung Nan and Tung Bei's eyes were filled with shock, but they did not say anything. They just quietly watched the scene of Ning Fan and Fan Lianxiu running away. Both of them were at the thought fragmentation realm, but they could not hurt Fan Lianxiu at all. They wondered what kind of cultivation base this person has to be to actually scare Fan Lianxiu away. Could this person be an ancient immortal venerable? No, it's obviously not. The chi that this person exudes is far from the thought fragmentation realm. Both of their eyes were filled with confusion. However, those confusion turned into shock the moment Ning Fan made his move. Freeze. Ning Fan's speed was too fast. In just a flash, a golden light pierced through the sky and appeared 1,000 zhang away from Fan Lianxiu. He pressed his index finger forward, and all the void storms within 1,000 zhang were immediately frozen. The space seemed to be frozen and time seemed to have stopped. Fan Lianxiu's expression suddenly changed as he was unable to move. He was actually frozen by Ning Fan's finger. The Eastern Sky Ancestor Emperor's heaven sealing technique. Where did this person come from? He actually knows this technique. Tung Nan and Tung Bei were both shocked. Any cultivator who had the slightest bit of insight and recognized the heaven-sealing art would be greatly alarmed. As soon as he pointed at Fan Lianxiu, he suddenly raised his hand. The 5 rain swords were already hovering in front of him. He could tell that the blood soul technique was strange, so he didn't hold back and used his strongest technique right away. With a tap of his index finger, the 5 swords immediately drew in the will of heaven and earth, whistling out and directly slicing Fan Lianxiu's blood soul body into 6 pieces. Sword of Tao Laws. This kid's 5 swords actually have a trace of the power of Tao laws. Tung Nan and Tung Bei weren't the only ones shocked. Even Earth Demon and Iron Crow, the 2 celestial sovereigns of the past, were shocked. Ever since the 2 of them became Ning Fan's slaves, they could be considered to have seen quite a number of astonishing feats from him. However, when they saw the sword light of Tao laws at this moment, they were still a little shocked. After the initial shock, they felt that it was a pity. Both of them were once celestial sovereigns of the past. Even though their strength had declined, they could still use a little bit of the power of Tao laws. When they fought against Fan Lianxiu just now, both of them had also tried to use the power of Tao laws. However, they could not hurt him at all. From their point of view, even though Ning Fan's 5 rain swords were powerful, it was still not enough to hurt Fan Lianxiu. Sure enough, Fan Lianxiu's body was sliced into 6 pieces, but not a single drop of blood flowed out. A blood-red light flashed and his body was directly reconstructed in the blood light. Even the technique of Tao laws can't hurt this ferocious being? Ning Fan's eyes turned serious and he withdrew the 5 rain swords. Fan Lianxiu harumphed disdainfully and said coldly, "This kind of ability can hurt others but it can't hurt me." Barbaric bull collapsing mountain technique. Fan Lianxiu narrowed his old eyes. He actually stopped running. He waved his hand and summoned a blood mountain, and thrust it towards the sky. The blood mountain had already risen into the sky. Immediately, tens of thousands of flaming bulls rushed out from below. All of them were the shadows of barbaric bulls. Their iron hooves stepped on the sky and charged towards Ning Fan. In the beginning, he ran away as soon as he saw Ning Fan because he was afraid of the 3 types of power in Ning Fan's body. Now he stopped running because he could tell that Ning Fan did not know his weakness. It seemed like Ning Fan did not know how to use the 3 types of power to hurt him. In that case, he only needed to kill Ning Fan before he could see through his weakness. There was no need for him to run away anymore. With Fan Lianxiu's current cultivation base, a single flaming bull was enough to kill Ren Xian. If tens of thousands of flaming bulls were to charge at him at the same time, the tremendous force would definitely be enough to easily kill Shikong, who was slightly weaker. Previously, when this ferocious being saw me, he immediately ran away. His eyes were filled with fear just now, but now it has changed. The 5 rain swords can't hurt him. I'm afraid even if I summon the 5 sword of war, and use all 10 of them at the same time, they still won't be able to hurt him. This ferocious being's ability is really strange. It can ignore the damage of Tao laws. No wonder even 100,000 cultivators couldn't take him down in the past. I wonder if I can hurt him with this ability. Ning Fan's scarlet eyes suddenly turned purple. His silver hair turned black and his white robe turned black. His ghost face turned black bit by bit. At the moment when his face turned black, he suddenly raised his finger and pointed at the 10,000 flaming bulls. Then he uttered 2 cold and emotionless words. Shagu. Ever since Ning Fan returned, Fairy Hanwu's beautiful eyes had always been fixed on him. She was the one who was the closest to Ning Fan among the group of women. The moment Ning Fan turned into black robes, she clearly saw his eyes turn as cold as ice. That kind of coldness made her feel as if he had completely turned into a stranger. It was so unfamiliar that she did not dare to recognize him. If she did not see Ning Fan turn from white to black with her own eyes, she would almost think that the black-robed Ning Fan was another person. Mounz and old ancestor Jin Hua arrived late with a group of cultivators who were in distress. As soon as they arrived, they saw the scene of Ning Fan turning into black robes. Both of them were filled with fear. Old ancestor Jin Hua, in particular, had the most fear on his face. He had been injured by the black-robed Ning Fan before. Thus, he knew very well how terrifying Ning Fan's ability was in this state. With just a finger, He could even erase a cultivator's cultivation base. This is the returning ruin finger. The returning ruin finger of the Fuli clan. How can this little thief display this technique? Immortal concubine Zhongyu did not say a word, but her heart was filled with astonishment. The Fuli clan had long been destroyed in the ancient times. In this world, there were very few cultivators who were qualified to know the name of the Fuli clan. As for those who could recognize the returning ruin finger, there were even fewer of them. As for those who could display the returning ruin finger, they should have all died. The Fuli clan should have all died. Could it be that this little thief possesses the bloodline of the Fuli clan? Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to display the returning ruin finger. In the dictionary of the Fuli clan, the two words shaga meant returning ruin. The ability that Ning Fan was displaying now was also what immortal concubine Zhongyu thought of as the returning ruin finger. Ning Fan had comprehended this technique from the black-robed elderly man. His understanding of this technique was extremely shallow. Even so, the power of this technique should not be underestimated. The returning ruin finger was to return everything in the world to nothingness. The power of this technique was the opposite of the great Tao. Suddenly, billowing black mist appeared in front of the herd of 10,000 bulls. When the black mist rolled towards the herd of bulls, the flames on their bodies were immediately extinguished. In one breath, the flames were extinguished. In 3 breaths, all the barbaric bulls wailed miserably. Their bodies began to rot. In 6 breaths, all the barbaric bulls' skin and flesh had decayed and fell off, leaving only their skeletons. In 10 breaths, the herd of bulls including their skeletons turned into ashes and vanished in the void space. In 10 breaths, the technique was broken. 10 breaths was also the limit of Ning Fan's current returning ruin finger. He pointed his index finger at Fan Lianxiu again. Countless black mist rolled towards him. Being engulfed by the black mist, Fan Lianxiu's cultivation base actually showed signs of falling. In 1 breath, his cultivation base fell for 1,000 years. In 10 breaths, he fell for 10,000 years. His blood-soul body was being destroyed bit by bit in the black mist. In just 10 breaths, his cultivation base immediately recovered to its original state. His body also recovered. What a strange ability. Fortunately, this young man didn't comprehend this technique. Otherwise, he would certainly be able to injure my blood-soul body. I didn't expect that this young man has 4 types of power that can injure me instead of 3. No, judging from this young man's strangeness, there might be a 5th and a 6th type. I might not be able to kill this young man even if I continue to fight him. It's better for me to run away. Fan Lianxiu's expression changed again. With a sway of his body, he turned into a ray of blood-red light and ran away. Ning Fan's eyes flashed. He chased after Fan Lianxiu while his mind was filled with thoughts. When this ferocious creature first saw me, it immediately ran away. It must be because I have something that he is deeply afraid of. Later on, he stopped running because he saw that I didn't reveal any means that he was afraid of. He knew that I didn't see through the weakness of his blood-soul body. That's why he wanted to kill me before I realized it. With my current understanding of the returning void finger, I can't injure this ferocious creature. But I must have some means that this ferocious creature is extremely afraid of. With Ning Fan's intelligence, he immediately deduced this point from Fan Lianxiu's various actions. The 5 rain swords wasn't just his strongest ability. Among the 5 swords, there was also the separation and reunion sword, which was a 12 nirvana acquired magical treasure. If this technique couldn't injure Fan Lianxiu, it meant that ordinary divine abilities and magical treasures wouldn't be able to hurt him. Among the many means that I have, which one is the one that Fan Lianxiu is most afraid of? Suddenly, Ning Fan's mind recalled a verse of the barbarian ancestor scripture that he often heard when he was transforming into a mortal and comprehending the truth. Barbarian is the ancestor of nature, the great sect of myriad domains. Barbarian is born in the mortal world and dies in the tribulation. Everything can't be clung to. Perhaps this person is afraid of my tribulation blood. Or perhaps he's afraid of my Tao of obsession. Ning Fan's figure flashed once again, and appeared in front of Fan Lianxiu, blocking his path. This time, it wasn't the tribulation sense technique, but the Tao sense technique. As soon as he pointed his finger, the west wind appeared. Immediately, the strange scene of thousands of leaves fluttering in the air appeared between heaven and earth. Humph! This brat is really stupid. He actually hasn't discovered what I'm afraid of. It's just the Tao sense technique. Why would I be afraid of it? Fan Lianxiu sneered. Without the slightest fear of the thousands of leaves in front of him, he directly dashed forward, attempting to break the seal of the technique. However, as soon as he entered the range of the technique, the west wind enveloped him. Fan Lianxiu's expression immediately changed and cold sweat flowed all over his body. The west wind technique was a Tao sense technique that Ning Fan had created. It contained his Tao sense of obsession. Even Fan Lianxiu himself did not expect that under the corrosion of the Tao sense of obsession, his blood-soul body would crumble along with the shadows of the thousands of leaves, turning into ashes bit by bit. The fifth type. This brat actually has a fifth type of force that could injure me. It's obsession. Damn it. This man is actually a obsession cultivator. It's actually a obsession cultivator that only 1 out of 1,000,000 people in the Jieling clan possesses. Damn it. Damn it. The destructive power of obsession to savage beasts is much more terrifying than the blood of the beast. Ancient statue, protect me. The west wind was like the Tao. Almost in the blink of an eye, it was going to kill Fan Lianxiu on the spot. At the moment of certain death, Fan Lianxiu shouted loudly and summoned an ancient statue from the depths of the void. That ancient statue was one of the 7 ancient statues that Ao Xian, an old ancestor poisonous dragon, used during the blood sacrifice ceremony in the desolate land. As soon as the ancient statue appeared, Fan Lianxiu's blood-soul body directly entered the ancient statue and possessed it. All of a sudden, an aura force that was comparable to an ancient immortal venerable was awakening on the ancient statue. With the power of the west wind technique, it could no longer hurt Fan Lianxiu, who was inside the ancient statue. Once the blood soul enters the ancient statue, it can't be separated anymore. Initially, I planned to devour enough flesh and blood to improve my blood soul's cultivation base before merging with the ancient statue. Now it seems like I have no choice but to merge with the ancient statue in advance. However, even if I successfully resurrect after 6 days, my strength will certainly be much weaker than before. It's all this brat's fault. He forced me to hide in the ancient statue. This brat deserves to die. Billions of barbarian souls appear. The ancient statue was like an incomparably huge stone puppet. Step by step, it slowly and firmly walked towards Ning Fan in the void. Fan Lianxiu was not going to run anymore. He wanted him to pay the price. With a point of his finger, a huge pool of blood appeared in the air. Bloody souls flew out from the pool of blood. Each of these souls belonged to the barbarians who had died unjustly in the blood sacrifice ceremony in the wildlands countless years ago. As soon as those souls appeared, each of them glared at Fan Lianxiu with unforgettable hatred. It was unknown how many souls there were. 1 billion, 10 billion, 100 billion, or even more, uncountable. In the past, the 6th barbarian ancestor Fan Lianxiu disdained to sacrifice all the living beings in the desolate land in exchange for a chance to cultivate the tribulation blood and become the tribulation spirit of Taitsong. The barbarians did not enter samsara after they died. Before their souls dissipated, they were all taken away by Fan Lianxiu and refined into the blood pool. Each of the dead barbarians had an unforgettable hatred towards Fan Lianxiu. That hatred turned into endless joss flames of slaughter and accumulated in the blood pool for countless years. It was obviously the joss flames of slaughter that were used to kill Fan Lianxiu. However, for some reason, Fan Lianxiu could use them instead. This simply defied common sense. I don't need your faith. I only need hatred. The more you hate me, the better. My Tao is hatred. In this world, only cultivators who cultivate the Tao of hatred can use the joss flames of slaughter at will. And I am one of them. Bloodbow spirit, appear. Barbaric slaughter arrow, condense. The ancient statue sneered and grabbed forward with its stone hand. Immediately, a young archer appeared between heaven and earth. The young archer's eyes were cold and emotionless. With a shake of his body, he turned into a blood bow and fell into the ancient statue's hand. The ancient statue grabbed at the blood pool with its huge hand. The endless joss flames of slaughter immediately turned into a blood arrow and fell into the ancient statue's hand. His left hand drew the bow, and his right hand released the arrow. As soon as the bowstring was released, the entire world seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. He wanted to use this arrow to kill Ningfan and eliminate the hatred in his heart. Now that his blood soul had possessed the ancient statue, his strength was close to that of an ancient immortal venerable. With this joss flames of slaughter arrow, he could kill any cultivator below the immortal venerable realm. This was an attack from an ancient immortal venerable. He firmly believed that no one in this world could withstand it. He recklessly collected the hatred of the people and ignored their anger. He did not need their faith. In the blood pool, the remnant souls of the barbarians who had been dead for many years could not bear to look at Ningfan. They were unwilling to accept this. They hated Fan Lianxiu, and their hatred had turned into the joss flames of slaughter. They only hoped that one day, someone would take away the joss flames of slaughter and kill Fan Lianxiu. However, what made them sad was that even the joss flames of slaughter that were born from their hatred had become a tool that Fan Lianxiu used to display his abilities. Is this the sorrow of the weak? At the moment when the ancient statue drew the bow and knocked the arrow, countless living beings in this world instantly felt a sense of impending doom. That arrow was clearly aimed at Ningfan, but its attack range included all the living beings in this world. The higher the cultivation base of a person, the stronger the sense of danger they felt. They would die. They would die. They would die. Mounzi and old ancestor Jin Hua were filled with remorse and hatred. They had never thought that the outcome of following Ningfan to this place was to be killed by an arrow from a peerless ferocious creature. If they had known this earlier, they would certainly not have followed Ningfan to this place. It was already too late for them to escape now. Both Earth Devil and Taoist Iron Crow wore unwilling expressions. The reason why they lowered their status and became Ningfan's slaves was to save their own lives. How could they be willing to die? However, the destructive power of the ancient statue's arrow was too strong. Perhaps only the two of them could withstand it with their immortal venerables' cultivation bases when they were at their peak. Now, if they are hit by the arrow, they would certainly die. Immortal concubine Zhongyu was so anxious that she almost cried. She was not afraid of the arrow. If she is hit by it, she might be the only one in this place who would not die. When she was at her peak, she was a 9 tribulation immortal emperor after all. No matter how weak her broken spirit was, it would still be very difficult to kill her. Even if she is hit by the arrow, she would at most suffer more serious injuries. Her life would not be in danger. However, she was afraid that Ningfan would be shot to death. She had been struck by Ningfan's tribulation restriction, right? If Ningfan dies, the tribulation restriction would kill her as well, right? The only thing that could kill her in this place was that damn tribulation restriction, right? I'm going all out. Even if I have to use the last of my broken spirit's power, I must protect this little thief's life. Immortal concubine Zhongyu gritted her teeth. Without saying a word, she wanted to fly out and protect Ningfan with her life. Unfortunately, before she could do anything, a giggling little loli appeared in a flash. Silver lightning crackled around her body and blocked Ningfan's path. She was the primordial spirit of immortal loli, who ran out of the lightning capturing banner after eating and drinking to her heart's content. Currently, the golden color of immortal loli's primordial spirit had completely disappeared. No one could tell that it was the primordial spirit of an immortal emperor, unless she was willing to. After eating and drinking to her heart's content in the lightning capturing banner, immortal loli still had not recovered her memories, nor completed the evolution of her lightning body. However, her chi had already skyrocketed to the early thought fragmentation realm. Even though she was just at the early thought fragmentation realm, her aura made her fearless even when facing the current ancient statue. Father, don't be afraid. Xian will protect you. No one is allowed to hurt my father. Chapter 901. The ancient statue held a blood bow in his hand. The slaughter blood arrow on the bowstring was glaring, and the arrow was burning with a bloody fire. As soon as the arrow left the bowstring, the entire world was torn apart bit by bit. It was almost split into two under the power of this arrow. When the arrow approached him, Ning Fan seemed to have an illusion. It was as if he could sense the undying hatred of the billions of barbarian souls in the blood pool. This arrow was condensed from Joss flames of slaughter, drawn with a blood bow, and shot out with the full strength of an ancient statue. Its might was so formidable that it was sufficient to annihilate any living being beneath the immortal Exalt realm. We can't block it. However, we can't retreat. Ning Fan was clad in black robes. His eyes were always cold and emotionless. It was as if nothing could affect him once he turned into black robes, not even the arrow. Behind him, there were tens of thousands of human cultivators, as well as the creatures of heavenly barbarian city. If he retreated, this arrow would immediately kill everyone. I can't retreat. The enemy's strength was close to that of an ancient celestial venerable. Although he was already a powerhouse after cultivating for so long, there was still a huge gap between him and the celestial venerable level. Comparing the two, the opponent was like a huge tree, and he was like an ant under the tree. Wanting to shake the tree with the strength of an ant was difficult. But even an ant would have the wrath of an ant. Moreover, it wasn't that this arrow didn't have any weaknesses. Its power was all concentrated on the Joss flames of slaughter, and its weakness was also the Joss flames of slaughter. At the moment when the blood slaughter arrow was about to hit him, his innate ghost face was slightly trembling with excitement. That kind of excitement was like a hungry wolf that had seen its prey. That kind of excitement was like the innate ghost face, which was born to restrain the killing Joss flames. Ning Fan's eyes narrowed slightly. When he felt the trembling of the innate ghost mask, he suddenly had a strange thought. It wanted to rush towards the blood arrow, grab it, crush it, and devour it. Without waiting for Ning Fan to understand the origin of this feeling, a lightning suddenly flew out from the storage pouch. It was the immortal Loli who came out from the lightning capturing banner. The celestial Loli here only had her primordial spirit. The primordial spirit's power transformed her body, but she still had a short and cute appearance. That adorable face of hers was still smiling foolishly at first, but when she saw that the ancient statue was audacious enough to shoot an arrow at Ning Fan, she was instantly enraged. Who was Ning Fan? That was her father. This ancient statue was really bold, actually daring to shoot her father with an arrow. Too abominable. Father, don't be afraid. Xian Xian will protect you. No one is allowed to hurt my father. Once again, she stood in front of Ning Fan. Her small hands seemed to be forming hand seals randomly, but they immediately activated the lightning power and formed a divine ability. The arrow was extremely fast, but Immortal Loli's technique was even faster. In a split second, an incomparably huge silver lightning diagram appeared in the air. Cold chi soared into the sky from the center of the lightning diagram. A lightning war chariot emitting surging cold mist suddenly appeared. Once the lightning chariot appeared, millions of frost lightning runes began to revolve around it. The lightning cannons on the carriage surged with power. With a loud boom, a dark lightning cannon shot out, piercing through the sky. There were 9 lightning runes on the lightning cannon. This thunder chariot was the dark thunder chariot summoned by the Extreme Thunder Palace's secret technique. In the past, the immortal Loli could only summon a level 8 lightning chariot. Using a level 9 lightning chariot was too much for her. However, now that her strength had increased significantly, it was much easier for her to use it. An 8th grade lightning chariot could kill most of the old monsters at the void-shedding realm. A 9th grade lightning chariot's destructive power was infinitely close to that of an immortal venerable. There were not many old monsters at the thought fragmentation realm who could withstand the destructive power of this cannon. Wherever the lightning cannon shot passed through, heaven and earth were immediately frozen. The blood arrow was originally coming at an extremely fast speed. However, as soon as it was hit by the lightning cannon, its entire body began to freeze bit by bit. The slaughter Joss flames inside the arrow also slowed down. 40% of its power was directly frozen. The first cannon shot failed to stop the blood arrow, but it managed to weaken its power by 40%. Immortal Loli raised her small hand. Rumbling lightning power formed a divine ability. The dark thunder chariot did not stop at all, and fired the second cannon shot. After the second cannon shot passed through the arrow, the power of the blood arrow was reduced by 40% again, leaving only 20%. At this critical moment, the third cannon shot arrived. The third cannon shot directly shattered the blood arrow, turning it into specks of slaughter-joss flames that filled the air and gradually dissipated. After 3 consecutive shots, the immortal Loli directly blocked the blood arrow that was close to the power of an immortal prime. This scene shocked countless people. Countless exclamations came from the crowd of cultivators. When the immortal Loli's figure landed in everyone's eyes, she immediately became a senior expert. Early thought shattering. There's no mistaking it. This senior has the energy of the early thought demolishing stage. Strange. Under the suppression of the forbidden immortal force, there's actually someone who can maintain the cultivation of the thought-fragmenting realm. That's the Dark Thunder War Chariot, the secret art of the Eastern Extreme Thunder Palace. This senior is undoubtedly a cultivator of the Extreme Thunder Palace. The might of 3 cannons blocked the attack of an immortal venerate. This senior's Lightning War Chariot is definitely a Grade 9 War Chariot. The might of a 9th grade War Chariot is truly terrifying. It is said that there are only a few 9th grade War Chariots in the entire Supreme Thunder Palace. Even Mounz, Patriarch Jinhua, Tung Nan, and Tung Bei felt their scalps tingle after witnessing the might of the Class 9 War Chariot with their own eyes. The most inconceivable thing was the way Immortal Loli addressed Ning Fan. Daddy. An old monster who could activate a 9th grade Lightning War Chariot and block the attack of an immortal venerate actually called Ning Fan Daddy. What kind of person could have such a violent daughter? Could it be that Ning Fan is an ancient immortal venerate? Fellow Taoist Zhao Jian. Could he be an ancient immortal venerate? Mounz and old ancestor Jinhua exchanged glances with each other. Both of their hearts were beating wildly. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that it was likely to be true. Immortal concubine Zhang Yu's beautiful eyes flickered with astonishment, dispelling the thought of saving Ning Fan. With Immortal Loli's help, Ning Fan would not be in much danger. Fan Lianxia was inwardly shocked when the blood arrow was broken. He really did not dare to underestimate the might of a 9th grade Lightning War Chariot. His heart began to race again. He thought to himself that Ning Fan was indeed his nemesis. Before he merged with the ancient statue, he was not a match for Ning Fan. Thus he could only run away. Now that he had merged with the ancient statue, he had gained an extremely violent daughter, who could even block the attack of an immortal venerate. In that case, even if he continues to stay here and fight Ning Fan, it would be difficult for him to kill Ning Fan. Troublesome. This is really troublesome. Even though I have merged with the ancient statue, the power of the ancient statue is not inexhaustible. It seems like it won't be easy to kill this brat. Forget it. Let's leave this place for now. Once we find the ancient statues and blood souls of the other barbaric ancestors, we can join forces and seek revenge on this brat. Fan Lianxia made up his mind. He immediately controlled the ancient statue and made a grabbing motion. Countless amounts of joss flames of slaughter were drawn out from the blood pool. He condensed them into arrows and shot them out. Then he stepped on the sky and left with huge strides, bringing the blood pool with him. Every step he took covered an immeasurable distance. Humph! I won't let you run away. Immortal Loli activated the Dark Lightning War Chariot again, and fired 3 shots consecutively, destroying the second blood arrow. With a tap of her feet, she directly stood on the chariot. She drove the chariot with a slight smile on her face, and chased after the ancient statue. Streaks of lightning cannon fire blocked the path of retreat of the ancient statue. Fan Lianxia was so angry that he laughed instead and stopped running away. Like father, like daughter. Ning Fan pursued me relentlessly, and now his daughter also dares to pursue me relentlessly. Does she really think that I, the 6th generation barbaric ancestor, am a herbivore? Since they didn't want him to leave, he wouldn't escape. He wanted to stay here and fight it out with the immortal Loli. He wanted to see if his ancient stone statue was stronger, or if the immortal Loli's war chariot was stronger. Aren't you going to run away? If you aren't going to run away, I'm going to use my ultimate technique. He unsealed 10th grade lightning chariot. Immortal Loli's voice was very soft. However, as soon as her voice fell, the scene of tens of thousands of lightning rumbling appeared between heaven and earth. Her voice, amidst the rumbling thunder, was transmitted into everyone's ears exceptionally clearly. She stood on the lightning chariot, and the lightning diagram covered the entire void. The direction where the lightning struck was actually moved according to her will. It was as if she had become the Lord of Lightning in this place. Her small face was filled with pain. She gritted her teeth. More and more runes appeared on the dark lightning chariot. The 10th lightning mark appeared beside the 9 lightning marks on the lightning cannon. However, summoning the 10th grade lightning chariot was obviously too much for Immortal Loli. Only half of the 10th lightning mark had appeared, and it could not be condensed anymore. As for Immortal Loli, her face was already slightly pale. What? This lady can actually summon a 10th grade chariot. This can't be real, right? It's said that a 10th grade chariot can kill an immortal venerable, and severely injure an immortal king with a single blast. Isn't it said that only the past extreme lightning palace lords could condense a 10th grade lightning chariot? How can this lady do it? No, it's not a real 10th grade lightning chariot. However, its power is incomparable to any 9th grade lightning chariot. The crowd of cultivators exclaimed in surprise. Amidst the exclamation, the Immortal Loli suddenly turned her head and smiled sweetly at Ning Fan. Even though it was a pity that she could not summon a real 10th grade lightning chariot in one go, it should be enough to deal with the ancient statue. Father, Xian will protect you well because you are my father. Immortal Loli endured the pain in her chest and the incomparably huge burden to activate the dark lightning chariot. Once again, she fired the cannon at the ancient statue. Even though the current dark lightning chariot was not a real 10th grade chariot, its power was enough to severely injure an ancient immortal venerable, whose cultivation base was slightly weaker. Just as Fan Lianxia was about to retaliate against Immortal Loli, his expression suddenly changed. Without saying a word, he activated the body of the ancient statue and turned around to flee. He fled extremely quickly, but the lightning cannon's attack was even faster. It even triggered the response of the lightning in heaven and earth. Fan Lianxia felt like he was hallucinating. Every single lightning in this world was the cannon fire of Immortal Loli's lightning cannon. This world was filled with lightning. There was no way for him to avoid it. This ancient statue's strength was originally close to that of an ancient immortal venerable. However, the moment the lightning cannon struck it, its stone body was immediately frozen. What was the so-called dark lightning? It was the coldest lightning in the world. It could freeze and kill everything. Fan Lianxia's ancient stone body shattered inch by inch in the ice, revealing the bloody soul underneath. The bloody soul glared at Immortal Loli with hatred. It actually ignored the power of the lightning cannon and fled. His ancient stone body could not withstand a single attack from Immortal Loli. However, his bloody soul was not afraid of any of her lightning abilities. Countless cultivators sucked in a cold breath at this moment. They could not imagine that an ancient statue whose strength was close to that of an ancient immortal venerable would be destroyed by the lightning cannon of the war chariot. Why is there an old man with a bloody soul hiding inside the stone statue? The war chariot that was close to the 10th grade actually failed to kill this old man? On the other hand, Immortal Loli was a little surprised that Fan Lianxia could survive the attack of the lightning cannon. She wanted to risk her life to attack Fan Lianxia again. However, she suddenly realized that a golden light flashed beside her and Ning Fan's figure appeared. Thank you for standing in front of me when I was in trouble. Ning Fan patted the head of Immortal Loli's primordial spirit. His smile was very warm. His black robes had already faded and turned back into white robes with silver hair. Every time Immortal Loli stood in front of him to protect him, it touched his heart and made him value his relationship with her even more. Even if that relationship was just a fictitious father-daughter relationship. You're tired. Let me handle the rest of the matters. Immortal Loli could not see Ning Fan's smile because of the ghost mask. However, she could see the smile in his eyes. It was extremely gentle, as if it could melt away all the coldness in the world. It was her first time seeing such a gentle look in Ning Fan's eyes. She could not help but nod her head obediently and giggled. All right. Let father go and catch that old man Xue Han. Xian just wanted to rest. Wait for me to come back. Ning Fan's body flashed and turned into a golden rainbow, chasing after Fan Lianxiu. Fan Lianxiu, who was running tiredly, suddenly realized that Ning Fan was chasing after him. He immediately complained. Since his stone body was destroyed, he had almost no chance of winning against Ning Fan now. He carried the blood pond and continued to run while holding the blood bow spirit in his hand. Seeing that Ning Fan was getting closer and closer to him, Fan Lianxiu's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. He was like a lone wolf that was going to fight for his life. He suddenly stopped and turned around. Even though my stone body is destroyed, the power of this arrow is still not something you can withstand. Turn the hatred of all living beings into my arrows. Kill. 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 Fan Lianxiu's eyes were filled with madness. He waved his hand and drew out a large amount of Joss flames of slaughter from the blood pond. Instantly he shouted the word kill 3 times. Each time he shouted a word, he would shoot out a slaughter blood arrow. 3 slaughter blood arrows pierced through the sky and went straight for Ning Fan. Since Fan Lianxiu had lost his stone body, the power of the slaughter blood arrows was not as strong as before. Even so, the 3 arrows still had the power to kill a peak Shikong realm expert. They were not to be underestimated. Facing the 3 arrows, Ning Fan neither dodged nor evaded them. His eyes were deep and emotionless. The innate ghost mask kept emitting excitement. That excitement gradually infected Ning Fan, as if it had fused with him. To Ning Fan, the slaughter blood arrows were like a delicacy. Although he had refined the innate ghost mask in the past, he was still unable to control it perfectly due to his limited cultivation base. But at this moment, the innate ghost mask was willing to be perfectly controlled by Ning Fan just to get the delicacy that was about to enter his mouth. It was as if there was a voice that kept bewitching Ning Fan to devour the Joss flames of slaughter in front of him. It was as if there was a voice that kept urging him. Devour, devour, devour. Gradually, Ning Fan's body was filled with an unknown confidence. This confidence made him take a step forward instead of retreating in the face of the 3 slaughter blood arrows. Closer, closer, closer. The 3 slaughter blood arrows pierced through the sky. Ning Fan borrowed the power of the ghost mask and shouted a word. Bang. This word contained the power of the innate ghost mask. This word seemed to have a natural suppressive effect on all the Joss flames of slaughter in the world. It was as if all the killings in the world had to listen to Ning Fan's command. It was because he was the owner of the innate ghost mask. It was because he was the new young emperor of the Slaughter Palace in the last 6 million years. He was the master of all the killings in the world. As soon as the word fell, it was as if his words were the law. The 3 blood arrows that were flying towards him were actually shattered just like that. How is this possible? Fan Lianxiu was shocked. He attacked again and shot 7 arrows at Ning Fan. As the 7 arrows approached, Ning Fan's expression became even colder. He suddenly patted the top of his head, and a primordial spirit flew out. That primordial spirit was Ning Fan's primordial spirit. His primordial spirit looked at the 7 slaughter blood arrows with a cold and emotionless face. It used the power of the ghost mask to directly open its mouth and swallow the 7 arrows. Impossible. Even I can't ignore the damage of the Joss flames of slaughter. How could this kid swallow the slaughter blood arrows without suffering any damage? A feeling of shock instantly shrouded Fan Lianxiu's heart like a shadow. However, in the next moment, all the shock in Fan Lianxiu's heart froze. Ning Fan's primordial spirit returned to its original position and pointed his finger downwards. With just a finger, the west wind blew. The west wind was like the Tao and the death of a cultivator was like a leaf. Ning Fan's expression was cold. He looked at Fan Lianxiu like a decayed leaf. For a moment, Fan Lianxiu could not tell whether he was the dignified 6th-generation barbarian ancestor, or an inconspicuous withered leaf. I think you are like a leaf. When the wind blows, the leaf is extinguished. As soon as Ning Fan uttered those words, the shadows of the leaves in the void turned into ashes and dissipated. Fan Lianxiu's bloody soul body also crumbled at the same time, and vanished into thin air. What was left in this place was a blood pool that contained countless barbarian remnant souls, and a young archer with ferocious eyes. The young archer's eyes were cold and emotionless. When he saw that Ning Fan had killed Fan Lianxiu, he directly flew towards Ning Fan. This archer was refined by Fan Lianxiu sacrificing countless lives when he was alive. It was extremely ferocious. No one could subdue it other than Fan Lianxiu. Ning Fan's eyes turned cold. Just as he was about to kill this archer, an extremely excited voice suddenly came from the profound Yin world. Master. The little Bao sensed that there is an archer with a high grade in the outside world. It just so happens that it can devour it. Master, quickly release the little Bao and devour that archer spirit. As long as Master allows me to devour that archer spirit, I will be absolutely loyal to Master from today onwards. I will never have any thoughts of betrayal. I am willing to guarantee this with my Bao. The excited voice came from the archer spirit of the candle Bao. At this moment, the archer spirit of the candle Bao was sealed in the profound Yin world by Ning Fan. Even though it was separated by the profound Yin world, the archer spirit could still sense that there was a great tonic approaching from the outside world. Master, I beg you to let me devour that archer spirit. That is the legendary inferior innate archer spirit. At the same time, old ancestor Poisonous Dragon who was far away suddenly became furious. He was holding the compass in his hand. Out of the 7 rubies that were inlaid on it, the 6th one was broken. Damn it! The ancient statue of the 6th generation barbarian ancestor has been destroyed. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.